Prologue. The vast command center of New Eden's central administrative complex stretched before Alexander Prime, its advanced monitoring systems and holographic displays casting an ethereal blue glow across the polished floors. He stood before the towering windows, his lean frame silhouetted against the pale light of dawn, watching as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the ever-present greenish haze that had become a hallmark of their post-apocalyptic world. At 25, Alexander was the youngest of four brothers, but his bearing carried the weight of generations. Below him stretched the sprawling cityscape of his father's unified kingdom, a remarkable achievement built upon the ruins of the old world. The air carried the familiar metallic tang of radiation, though sophisticated atmospheric processors hummed constantly, making survival possible in what would otherwise be an uninhabitable wasteland. Steel and concrete structures rose from the ash-covered ground, their surfaces bearing the distinctive golden-tinged coating that protected against residual radiation. Between these towers, he could see the network of elevated walkways and transport tubes that connected various sectors of the city, a testament to human adaptation and resilience.
"The quarterly production reports from the eastern sectors, young lord,"
announced Morris, his father's aged advisor. The soft whirring of the old man's cybernetic eye broke the morning silence as it adjusted to the room's lighting. His weathered face bore the marks of someone who had witnessed the transformation of their world firsthand. Alexander accepted the reports with a slight nod, his violet eyes, a distinctive trait of the Prime bloodline, scanning the data with practiced efficiency. The holographic displays cast dancing shadows across his face as he manipulated the information streams. "The industrial output has increased by 15%, he observed, allowing himself a small smile. The integration protocols are working better than projected.
"Indeed, young lord, your economic initiatives have exceeded expectations."
Morris's organic eye crinkled with pride, while his cybernetic enhancement continued its constant scanning.
"Lord Darius will be pleased."
Through the windows, Alexander could see the industrial sectors coming to life as the morning progressed. Plumes of filtered steam rose from the processing plants, their color indicating the effectiveness of the new purification systems he had implemented. Workers in radiation-resistant suits moved about their tasks with purpose, their movements carefully monitored by automated security systems. "My father builds kingdoms with the sword," Alexander murmured, more to himself than Morris. The words hung in the air, mixing with the low hum of the environmental controls. "I will cement them with commerce and industry." The morning light caught the subtle sheen of his silver-threaded jacket, a garment that marked him as a scion of the Prime family. Unlike his brothers, who had followed their father's martial path, Alexander had chosen a different weapon: economics. The complex algorithms and market analyses that flowed across his screens were his battlefield, and entrepreneurial innovation was his conquest. A notification appeared in his peripheral vision, a reminder of his scheduled medical examination. The subtle chime triggered memories of his grandmother's story, of how she had suffered from an engineered virus before her eventual murder. The memory sent an involuntary shiver down his spine. "Morris, please ensure these reports reach the Development Council," Alexander said, straightening his posture. The weight of responsibility settled more heavily on his shoulders. "I have my monthly checkup to attend to." The old advisor bowed slightly, his cybernetic eye pulsing with acknowledgement.
"Of course, young lord. The medical facility awaits your arrival."
Alexander made his way through the complex's pristine corridors, each step echoing against the reinforced walls. The air grew increasingly sterile as he approached the medical wing, the environmental systems automatically adjusting to maintain optimal conditions. The facility occupied an entire wing of the complex, its white walls and purified air creating a stark contrast to the administrative sections. Dr. Elena Tang, the Prime family's chief physician, greeted him with her usual professional warmth. Her pristine white coat bore the subtle markings of her status, and her eyes held the sharp intelligence that had earned her this position of trust.
"Young Lord Prime,"
she said, gesturing to the examination chamber. The medical equipment hummed to life around them, each device calibrated specifically for the Prime family's unique genetic makeup.
Please make yourself comfortable. This won't take long.
Alexander complied, settling onto the examination table as various scanning devices activated. He had grown accustomed to these checkups, viewing them as just another responsibility of his position. But something in Dr. Tang's expression as she reviewed the initial readings made his heart skip a beat. "Is everything all right, Doctor?" he asked, noting how her fingers had frozen over the control panel. The silence that followed lasted a heartbeat too long, filled only by the steady beeping of monitoring equipment. Dr. Tang's face had lost its professional mask, replaced by something Alexander had never seen before: fear. The sophisticated medical displays cast an eerie glow across her features as she initiated a second scan, then a third, her movements becoming increasingly urgent with each pass of the diagnostic equipment.
Young Lord,
She finally spoke, her voice carefully controlled despite the tremor in her hands.
I'm detecting something concerning. Something I've seen only once before, in archived medical records.
Alexander felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. "My grandmother's records," he stated, watching as the doctor's slight nod confirmed his darkest suspicion.
A variant of the same engineered virus that afflicted her, yes. But this strain...
Dr. Tang's voice trailed off as she pulled up complex molecular structures on the main display, their twisted forms rotating slowly in the holographic field.
This one has been specifically modified to target the prime genetic sequence. Your genetic sequence.
The implications hit Alexander like a physical blow. The virus that had tortured his grandmother for years before her murder had been weaponized, refined, and aimed at his family once again. But this time it had found him instead of its intended target, his father. "How long?" he asked, his voice steady despite the tremor he felt in his chest. Dr. Tang's expression was grave as she studied the progression models.
Without intervention, the virus appears to be triggering severe magic radiation withdrawal, based on its progression rate. 1 year, perhaps less.
The words echoed in the sterile chamber like a death knell. 1 year. Less than a year to realize his dreams for the kingdom. Less than a year to prove that peace could be built on foundations other than military might. Over the next several days, Alexander underwent a battery of tests while continuing his duties as if nothing had changed. He reviewed industrial reports, approved development projects, and attended council meetings, all while carrying the weight of his diagnosis like a stone in his chest. It was during one such session, as he sat in his private office reviewing production quotas, that Dr. Tang requested an urgent meeting. The setting sun cast long shadows through the reinforced windows, painting the room in shades of amber and gold. "Young lord," she began, her usual composure tinged with excitement.
We may have found an option. Not a cure, but a possibility.
Alexander set aside his work, giving her his full attention. "Go on."
While we don't have the technology to combat this virus now, medical science is advancing rapidly. If we could preserve you, keep you in suspended animation until a cure is developed.
She activated a holographic display showing detailed schematics of a stasis pod.
The technology exists, it's experimental, but it exists.
Alexander studied the technical specifications, his mind already calculating probabilities and outcomes. "The risks,"
Significant.
Dr. Tang admitted.
The stasis process itself has been proven safe, but the duration of suspension would be undefined. It could be years, decades, or even centuries before a cure is developed. And there's no guarantee that.
"That I would ever wake up," Alexander finished for her. He stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the city he had helped to build. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the recovering landscape. The choice before him was stark: face certain death within a year, or gamble on an uncertain future. But as he watched the lights of the industrial sectors coming on in the gathering dusk, he realized it wasn't really a choice at all. His work was not finished. His vision for the kingdom was still incomplete. "How soon can the pod be prepared?" he asked, turning back to Dr. Tang.
A few days to calibrate the systems and prepare the facility. Young Lord, Are you certain?
Alexander's violet eyes reflected the determination that had helped his father forge a kingdom from chaos. Hope, Dr. Tang, is worth any price, even if that price is time itself. The next days passed in a blur of preparation and secrecy. Only a handful of trusted individuals were informed of his condition and decision. His father, upon learning the news, had raged against fate, with all the fury that had made him legendary on the battlefield. But in the end, even Darius Prime had to bow to the inevitable. On the appointed day, Alexander stood before the stasis pod in a secure facility deep beneath the administrative complex. He had spent the morning finalizing his affairs and recording messages for his family. Now dressed in a simple white medical garment, he looked more like a young man than a scion of the most powerful family in the known world.
The pod is ready, young lord.
Dr. Tang announced, her voice soft in the hushed chamber. Alexander touched the cool surface of the pod, feeling the hum of powerful technology beneath his fingers. How will you know when a cure is found?
The pod systems are connected to our medical databases. It will continuously monitor research developments and alert us to any breakthroughs relevant to your condition. When a viable cure is developed, the revival sequence will begin automatically.
He nodded, appreciating the elegance of the solution. Then there's nothing left but to begin. As he settled into the pod, Alexander thought of all he was leaving behind: his family, his work, his dreams for the future. But he also thought of what might lie ahead, of the world he might wake to see. Young Lord Prime, Dr. Tang said, her finger hovering over the activation controls.
The stasis process will be instantaneous from your perspective. One moment you'll be here and the next.
And the next, I'll either be cured or dead. He finished with a slight smile. Either way, Doctor, it has been an honor. The pod's crystal surface began to fog as the temperature dropped. Alexander closed his eyes, his last conscious thought a prayer that when he opened them again, there would still be a kingdom to serve, still a future to build. The stasis field activated with a soft hum, and Alexander Prime began his journey through time, carried forward by the only force stronger than death itself: hope. Chapter 1. The first sensation I remember is cold, a bone-deep, piercing cold that seemed to retreat from my flesh like a tide drawing back from shore. The sensation brought memories of New Eden's atmospheric processors. But this was different, more invasive. It permeated every fiber of my being, as if the very essence of my existence had been frozen and was now slowly, painfully thawing. My consciousness flickered like a faulty light, fragments of awareness, piecing themselves together with agonizing slowness. Each thought was a struggle, a battle against the fog that clouded my mind. The stasis pod, I remembered. The virus. My father's kingdom. But something was wrong. As I fought to regain control of my senses, I became aware of the surface beneath me. It was hard and unyielding, a stark contrast to the soft, cushioned interior of the stasis pod. I had entered what felt like a lifetime ago. The material was smooth and cool to the touch, like polished metal, but there was something unsettling about it. It seemed to leach the warmth from my body, leaving me feeling even more chilled and disoriented. My eyes cracked open to a blinding white light and unfamiliar shadows moving above me. The brightness was overwhelming, sending shards of pain lancing through my skull. I squinted against the glare, trying to make sense of my surroundings. The sterile environment bore none of the familiar golden-tinged coating that had protected our medical facilities from radiation. Instead, the walls were a pristine white, so clean and unblemished that they almost seemed to glow. The air felt different, wrong somehow. The metallic tang I'd grown up with, the ever-present reminder of our post-apocalyptic world, was gone. In its place was an artificial sterility that burned my nostrils, reminiscent of the purification chambers, but somehow more absolute. It was as if the very essence of life had been stripped from the atmosphere, leaving behind only a cold, clinical purity.
Subject is conscious,
A voice announced. Clinical, detached, nothing like Dr. Tang's careful warmth. The words were spoken with a precision that bordered on mechanical, each syllable crisp and devoid of emotion. The speaker's face remained hidden behind a transparent shield that reflected the harsh overhead lights, creating a kaleidoscope of white glare that made my eyes water. I strained to see past the reflection, desperate for some hint of humanity in this alien environment, but the face remained maddeningly obscured. I tried to move, to sit up, but my muscles felt like lead. They refused to obey my commands, remaining stubbornly unresponsive, no matter how hard I tried to will them into action. Panic began to set in as I realized the extent of my helplessness. I was trapped, a prisoner in my own body, completely at the mercy of these unknown individuals. Hands grabbed me. Strong, precise, professional. There was no gentleness in their grip, no hint of compassion or concern. They handled me with a clinical efficiency that was somehow more terrifying than any overt aggression. Through my blurred vision, I caught glimpses of white uniforms, their material different from anything I'd seen before, smoother and somehow alive with subtle patterns that shifted under the lights. It was as if the very fabric of their clothing was imbued with a technology beyond my comprehension.
Hold him steady.
Another voice commanded, this one coming from somewhere to my left.
Preparing secondary sedation.
The clinical tone carried undertones of authority that reminded me of military commanders in my father's war room, but stripped of any human warmth. There was a coldness to it, a detachment that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to turn my head to catch a glimpse of the speaker, but the hands holding me tightened their grip, keeping me immobile. My mind finally caught up with the danger. Adrenaline surged through my veins, temporarily overriding the weakness in my muscles. I thrashed against the hands holding me, my prime combat training kicking in despite my weakened state. The movement sent waves of nausea through my body, but I fought through it. I had to get free, had to find out what was happening. Wait, I tried to say, but my voice emerged as a hoarse whisper, scratching against my throat like sand. The words felt foreign on my tongue, as if my mouth had forgotten how to form them. Before I could finish my question, a mask descended over my face, sealing with practiced efficiency. The material felt strange against my skin, almost fluid in its perfect conformity to my features. It molded itself to the contours of my face, forming an airtight seal that cut off my desperate attempts at speech. Sweet-smelling gas filled my lungs before I could hold my breath, carrying an oddly metallic undertone that reminded me of the atmospheric processors, but refined, concentrated. It invaded my nostrils and mouth, flooding my senses with its cloying sweetness. I fought against it, my father's training screaming at me to resist, but the darkness was already creeping in at the edges of my vision. It was like being pulled into a void, a bottomless chasm of nothingness that swallowed me whole. The last thing I saw was a face leaning over me, studying me with cold scientific interest through eyes that seemed slightly too large, too perfectly spaced to be entirely human. The second awakening was different. Worse. There was no sensation at all. No cold, no warmth, no weight of my body against a surface. The absence was more complete than anything I'd experienced in the isolation chambers during my combat training. It was as if I had been stripped of my physical form, reduced to a disembodied consciousness, floating in an endless void. I tried to open my eyes, but there was no response. No muscles moved at my command. The darkness was absolute, but not like the darkness of closed eyes. This was emptiness, a complete and utter lack of anything tangible or real. It was a darkness that seemed to stretch on forever, an infinite expanse of nothingness that threatened to swallow me whole.
Subject is conscious.
A voice announced, but I didn't hear it with my ears. The words simply appeared in my awareness, like data streams flowing across the holographic displays I'd once monitored in New Eden's command center. They materialized in my mind, each letter and syllable forming with a clarity that was almost painful in its precision.
Beginning initial assessment.
I tried to speak, to demand answers, but no sound emerged. Instead, my thoughts formed words in the void. Where am I? What have you done to me? The question echoed in the nothingness, each word carrying the weight of my mounting panic. They reverberated through the emptiness, bouncing back at me with a force that made me want to recoil. But there was nowhere to go, no escape from the suffocating darkness that enveloped me.
I will be asking the question, Subject Prime.
The voice responded. Its tone was precise, measured, completely devoid of emotion. The artificial perfection of its cadence made my father's most disciplined generals seem chaotic in comparison. Each word was spoken with a clinical detachment that sent chills through my incorporeal form. There was no hint of humanity in that voice, no trace of the warmth or compassion that I had come to associate with the living. I demand to know what's happening, I projected, channeling all my authority as a scion of the prime bloodline into the thought. The words carried the same commanding presence that had once brought industrial leaders and economic advisors to attention. I focused all my willpower into that demand, hoping to break through the wall of cold indifference that surrounded me. Pain exploded through my consciousness. Not physical pain, but something worse. It was as if every nerve ending I no longer seemed to possess was on fire. The sensation transcended anything I'd experienced during combat training or endurance tests. It consumed me, flooding my awareness with a white-hot agony that obliterated all other thought. I tried to scream, but there was no mouth to scream with, no lungs to expel air. The pain was all-encompassing, a searing torment that seemed to go on forever.
As I said,
The voice continued calmly when the pain subsided.
I will be asking the questions. Resistance will result in correction. Now, state your full name and previous occupation.
The words materialized with precise clarity, each syllable perfectly formed in the void of my consciousness. I wanted to resist, to fight back against this violation. But the memory of that pain lingered like a phantom warning. It lurked at the edges of my awareness, a constant reminder of the consequences of defiance. Alexander Prime, I answered carefully, measuring each thought. The words felt heavy, weighted with the knowledge that they were being scrutinized by an unseen force. Fourth son of Darius Prime. I was Chief Economic Advisor to the United Kingdom's Development Council.
Good. Now, describe your educational background and skill set.
The voice maintained its mechanical perfection, devoid of any satisfaction or disapproval. The questioning continued for what felt like hours. Every detail of my life, my training, my experiences was extracted and examined. They probed my knowledge of New Eden's industrial infrastructure, the atmospheric processing systems, the genetic modifications that had allowed our people to survive. Each answer was met with a clinical detachment, as if my life's work was nothing more than data to be cataloged and analyzed. When I tried to evade or resist, the pain returned, sometimes sharp and sudden, sometimes a slowly building agony that threatened to shatter my sanity. Time lost all meaning in the void. I might have floated in that nothingness for days or weeks. There was no way to tell. The darkness became a constant companion, broken only by the arrival of different voices, each as artificially perfect as the first. They asked questions about different aspects of my knowledge and capabilities, their tones never varying from that chilling detachment. I learned to answer quickly and completely, to avoid the corrections that followed any hesitation. Then, without warning,
Preparing for simulation integration. Stand by.
reality crashed into existence around me. I gasped, actually gasped, with lungs that felt real, as my surroundings materialized. The sudden influx of sensory information was overwhelming after the complete absence of the void. The bridge of a spacecraft took shape, though I only recognized it from historical archives I'd studied. The metal deck beneath my feet thrummed with distant power, and holographic displays flickered in the air around me, more advanced than anything I'd seen in New Eden's command center. The technology was sleek and seamless, with a fluidity that spoke of centuries of advancement. The air carried a synthetic freshness, lacking both the metallic tang of my childhood and the sterile burn of my first awakening. It was clean and crisp, with a hint of something I couldn't quite identify, a faint, almost imperceptible scent that seemed to linger at the edges of my awareness. Looking down at myself, I found my body clad in a plain gray jumpsuit. The fabric felt real against my skin, the weight of my limbs and the beat of my heart perfectly simulated. But something in the back of my mind whispered that this was all artificial, a construct of unimaginable technology. Others began appearing around me, materializing in flashes of light that reminded me of the dimensional portals from our historical records. They were men and women in identical jumpsuits, their faces bearing the same expression of confusion and disorientation that I felt. Some I recognized from historical records, faces I'd seen in ancient databases, leaders and innovators from various eras who had been placed in stasis for one reason or another. They looked as lost and out of place as I felt, their eyes wide with a mix of wonder and fear.
Welcome, subjects.
A new voice announced. A figure in a crisp uniform appeared at the front of the bridge, his bearing military but unlike any military I'd known. His uniform bore no insignia I recognized, its material seeming to absorb and redirect light in impossible ways. The fabric seemed to shimmer and shift, as if it were alive with some unknown technology. The officer's face was a mask of perfect neutrality, his features so symmetrical and unblemished that they almost seemed artificial.
What year is it?
Demanded a woman with augmented cybernetic eyes that marked her as being from some time after my era. Her voice carried the sharp edge of someone accustomed to authority. She stood tall and proud, her stance radiating a confidence that belied the confusion in her eyes. The augmentations gleamed in the light, a testament to the advancements that had been made in the time since my own era. The officer's expression remained neutral, almost too perfect in its stillness.
The current year is 4157 CE, approximately 2,000 years since the last of you entered stasis.
The words hit me like a physical blow. 2,000 years. The kingdom I'd helped build, the future I'd planned for, it was all ancient history now. I felt a wave of vertigo wash over me, my mind reeling with the implications of such a vast span of time. I heard gasps and cries around me as others processed this information. The shock and disbelief were palpable, a tangible force that seemed to thicken the air. Someone began to weep, the sound eerily human in this artificial environment.
Your original bodies
The officer continued, his voice cutting through the growing chaos.
have long since ceased to be viable. However, your minds have been preserved and transferred to advanced containment systems, what we call brain tanks. This has allowed us to save you from your various afflictions and prepare you for a greater purpose.
What purpose? I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil in my mind. Why wake us now after so long? The questions burned in my throat, demanding answers that I feared would only lead to more questions. I searched the officer's face for any hint of emotion, any crack in that perfect mask of neutrality, but found none. The officer's gaze met mine, and I saw something like approval in his expression.
Humanity has reached the stars, but we face limitations. Biological bodies cannot endure the rigors of deep space exploration. But you, your preserved minds housed in advanced drone vessels, can go where we cannot. You will be our pathfinders among the stars, preparing the way for humanity's expansion into the galaxy.
Angry shouts erupted from several of my fellow subjects. Words like slavery and conscription filled the air, echoing off the metallic walls. The anger was understandable, the sense of betrayal and violation palpable. I remained silent, watching, analyzing. This was not the time for resistance, not yet.
Your cooperation,
The officer stated flatly,
is not optional.
as if to emphasize his point. Several of the most vocal protesters suddenly collapsed, their bodies convulsing with the same kind of pain I'd experienced in the void. Their screams filled the air, a chilling reminder of the power our captors held over us. I kept my face carefully neutral, though my mind was racing. They had complete control over our simulated bodies, just as they had control over our disembodied consciousness.
You will each be assigned an AI governor.
The officer continued once order was restored.
These entities will assist you in your missions and ensure compliance with operational parameters. Training will begin immediately. Remember, you are now part of something greater than yourselves. The future of humanity rests on your success.
As others around me struggled to process this new reality, I focused on controlling my breathing, on maintaining the appearance of acceptance. 2,000 years had passed, but some things remained constant. Power, control, the strong imposing their will on the weak. I had learned to work within such systems in my previous life, to achieve my goals through patience and careful manipulation. The world I'd known was gone, along with everyone and everything I'd cared about. But I was still Alexander Prime, and if there was one thing the Primes knew, it was how to adapt and survive. Let them think they had my compliance. Let them believe their pain could control me. I would play their game, learn their rules, and wait. After all, I now had all the time in the universe. Chapter 2. The training simulations began immediately, and without mercy. Each day, if you could call it that in this virtual space, brought new challenges, new systems to master, new ways to merge my consciousness with machine logic. The virtual environment shifted constantly, from the cold vacuum of space to the molten surface of worlds under terraformation. Through it all, streams of data flowed directly into my consciousness, turning my thoughts into a living computer. I found myself grateful for my business training. The ability to process multiple data streams simultaneously was proving unexpectedly valuable.
Initiating fabrication sequence.
Drone AI Unit 204's voice echoed in my mind, cold and precise as liquid nitrogen. The AI's presence felt like ice crystals forming in my thoughts, a chill that seemed to penetrate the very core of my being.
Prepare for neural interface calibration.
The simulation placed me in what appeared to be an asteroid field. Chunks of space rock drifted silently through the void, each one uniquely shaped by ancient cosmic collisions. They ranged in size from small pebbles to massive boulders, their surfaces pockmarked and scarred by eons of impacts. Raw materials floated before me, each tagged with composition data that streamed directly into my consciousness. Iron, nickel, rare earth elements. All the building blocks of industrial civilization scattered across the void. The information overlay painted everything in ghostly blue light, numbers and chemical compositions dancing at the edges of my awareness. The emptiness of space stretched out in all directions, an infinite expanse of darkness punctuated by distant stars. Their light seemed cold and distant, a stark contrast to the warm glow of New Eden's sun. Here, in the depths of the asteroid field, even that faint light was obscured by the drifting rocks, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out into eternity.
Extend fabrication arrays.
The AI instructed.
Focus your intention on the marked asteroid.
I directed my thoughts as taught, and massive mechanical arms unfolded from what I had come to think of as my drone body. The sensation was bizarre, like having extra limbs that responded to pure intention rather than muscle movement. Each appendage moved with perfect precision, their metallic surfaces catching starlight in ways that made them seem almost alive. The fabricator's energy field encompassed the target asteroid, and I could feel its composition as if I were touching it with my own hands. The asteroid's surface was rough and uneven, a testament to the countless impacts it had endured over millions of years. As the fabrication arrays moved closer, I could see the intricate patterns of cracks and fissures that crisscrossed its surface, each one telling a story of ancient violence and destruction. Dust and smaller debris clung to the asteroid's surface, a thin layer of cosmic grime that obscured its true colors.
Begin molecular restructuring.
This was the truly astonishing part. Swarms of drones surrounded the asteroid, weaving through space with seamless coordination as they maneuvered into position. Once they formed an intricate pattern around it, a force field flickered to life, enveloping the asteroid in a contained energy sphere. Inside this field, the drones released a cloud of nanoparticles that descended upon the rocky surface like a fine mist. These particles began to work at the molecular level, breaking down the asteroid's structure atom by atom. The asteroid's surface started to shimmer under the intense energy field, its rugged texture dissolving as the nanoparticles dismantled each molecule. What once required the power of massive factories was now accomplished effortlessly in the depths of space. The asteroid gradually fractured and disintegrated, its very essence transformed. This process was astonishing, a precise choreography of particles and energy breaking down the rock into manageable matter for extraction. I watched as the raw elements were methodically separated, leaving nothing but purified material ready for collection. The mining vehicle moved into position, extracting the fragmented materials to transport them for refinement. The entire operation was breathtaking, a molecular symphony of precision and power, technology unfolding in a display of unmatched efficiency. "The efficiency is remarkable," I commented, barely audible as I watched the asteroid's remains glint in the starlight, ready to be repurposed. In my time, this level of precision was unimaginable.
Irrelevant historical comparison.
The AI interrupted, its voice carrying no trace of interest or annoyance.
Focus on current parameters.
I suppressed a surge of irritation. The AI was right, of course. My past was irrelevant to our current task. But that didn't stop my mind from making comparisons, from marveling at how far technology had advanced in 2 millennia. The fabrication process alone represented centuries of technological evolution beyond anything we had dreamed of in New Eden. The brain tank technology was particularly fascinating. During rest periods between simulations, I had access to technical documentation about my new existence. The virtual library appeared as a vast database floating in darkness, its contents directly accessible through thought alone. The tank wasn't just a container. It was an entire life support ecosystem. Through some process I could barely comprehend, it converted raw energy into the precise nutrients my brain needed, while nanomachines maintained and renewed my neural tissue. I found myself spending more and more time in this virtual library, poring over the technical specifications and schematics of my new body. The level of detail was staggering, each component and subsystem laid out in perfect clarity. I could see the intricate networks of artificial neurons that now housed my consciousness, the complex web of connections that allowed me to interface with the drone's systems. So technically, I could live forever, I mused during one such study session, watching diagrams of microscopic machines dance through neural pathways.
Theoretical immortality is possible.
The AI confirmed, its response immediate and emotionless.
Practical operational lifespan is determined by mission parameters and survival rates.
There it was again, that subtle reminder that I was considered expendable. A drone, despite the human consciousness inside. I pushed the thought aside and focused on the next simulation, watching as the virtual environment reconstructed itself around me. Days blended into each other as the training intensified. The simulations grew more complex, combining multiple tasks simultaneously. I learned to control multiple systems at once, to process vast amounts of data through the direct neural interface. Solar winds buffeted my drone form as I practiced navigation through simulated space storms. Asteroid fields became obstacle courses, where split-second decisions meant the difference between success and failure. The AI was always there, a constant presence in my consciousness, guiding and correcting with mechanical precision. Its voice became as familiar as my own thoughts, though far colder and more structured.
Your efficiency has increased by 47% since initial integration.
It informed me during one particularly complex mining operation. My mining laser carved through a massive nickel-iron asteroid while defensive systems monitored for debris and radiation spikes.
However, you continue to exhibit unnecessary thought patterns.
I knew what it meant. Despite my best efforts to focus purely on our tasks, my mind constantly wandered to the past, to my family. My thoughts drifted to New Eden's gleaming towers, to the industrial complexes I had helped design. What had happened to my father's kingdom? To my brothers? Had the cure for my condition ever been found, or had I been forgotten in that stasis pod until these people found me? The questions gnawed at me, a constant itch in the back of my mind that no amount of training could erase. I tried to push them aside, to bury them under layers of data and machine logic, but they always resurfaced in the quiet moments between simulations. The human mind requires context, I replied carefully, manipulating the fabrication arrays with practiced precision. Understanding the past helps process the present.
Irrelevant. Focus on drone operations.
The parallel to my old world's symbiotes struck me then. Through the data streams, I could see the asteroid's core composition shifting as the fabricators worked. I remembered watching my brothers go through their integration ceremonies, merging with those semi-sentient beings to enhance their combat capabilities. The symbiotes had been alien but not emotionless. They formed true partnerships with their hosts, sharing not just abilities but experiences, feelings, even jokes. Unit 204 was different. It was pure logic and cold efficiency, a machine intelligence that saw emotion as an impediment to optimal performance. Each instruction came with perfect clarity, each correction delivered with mechanical precision. Yet I couldn't help wondering if there was more to it. In my experience, true intelligence, even artificial, rarely developed without some capacity for growth and adaptation. Unit 204, I ventured during a less intensive training session as my virtual form drifted through a simulated repair operation on a satellite array. How long have you been operational? The satellite array stretched out before me, a vast network of glittering metal and pulsing lights. Each satellite was a work of art, its surface etched with intricate patterns that served both form and function. Solar panels unfurled like delicate wings, their surfaces drinking in the unfiltered starlight. Communication dishes swiveled and adjusted, fine-tuning their alignment with an unseen network of relay stations.
Query. Irrelevant to current objectives.
The AI's response came with its usual immediacy, but something in its tone caught my attention. Understanding your operational history could improve our integration efficiency, I argued, using its own logic. The satellite's components floated around me, each one tagged with detailed specifications that flowed directly into my consciousness. A pause. The first hesitation I'd ever detected in the AI's responses. The silence stretched for 2.3 microseconds, a delay that would have been imperceptible to my human senses, but was clearly measurable through the neural interface.
This unit has been operational for 9 years, 3 months, 17 days, 4 hours.
That's quite a long time, I interrupted before it could list every second. The satellite's repair sequence continued automatically, my trained responses requiring minimal conscious input. Have you worked with other human simulacrum space drones?
Affirmative. This unit has integrated with 47 previous HSSD operators. Current integration is number 48 inches.
The implication sent a chill through my virtual spine. Each number represented a life, a consciousness like mine, trained and deployed and lost. What happened to the previous operators?
Mission casualties. Data classified.
The AI's response carried no emotion, no recognition of the weight behind those words. Of course, we were expendable after all. The designation made perfect sense now. Human simulacrum space drone. We weren't considered fully human anymore, just consciousness-driving machines, as disposable as any other drone in their arsenal. The only difference was that our organic brains could process information more energy efficiently and adapt in ways pure AI couldn't match. Yet even as this realization settled over me, my mind was already working on possibilities. I had spent my life learning to navigate complex systems, to find opportunities where others saw only constraints. This situation was just another system to understand and manipulate. The AI might be emotionless, but it was intelligent. And any intelligence, no matter how logical, had patterns that could be understood. The same was true for the humans running this program. They had their own goals, their own reasons for creating this strange merger of human and machine. Unit 204, I said, keeping my tone neutral as I completed the satellite repair sequence. Let's run through the advanced fabrication sequences again. I believe we can improve our efficiency ratings further.
Acknowledged. Initiating simulation sequence.
As the virtual environment reformed around us, I couldn't help but smile internally. They thought they had created perfect drones, human minds stripped of all agency, contained and controlled by technology and pain. But they had forgotten something crucial about human nature, something I had learned in my brief time as a leader in my father's kingdom. The most dangerous opponent isn't the one who fights back immediately. It's the one who watches, learns, and waits for the perfect moment to act. I was more than just a brain in a tank. I was Alexander Prime, and I had survived the end of my world once already. I could do it again. But first, I needed to master every aspect of this new existence. The fabricators, the neural interfaces, the AI itself, they were all tools, and tools could be used in ways their creators never intended.
Simulation ready.
Unit 204 announced.
Prepare for advanced fabrication training.
Ready, I responded, focusing my thoughts on the task at hand. For now, I would be their perfect drone, learning everything they had to teach. The time for anything else would come later. After all, according to their own technology, I had something approaching forever to figure it out. Chapter 3. The certification process ended with little ceremony. One moment I was completing my final simulation, disassembling and reconstructing a complex array of orbital satellites, and the next, a simple notification appeared in my consciousness. HSSD operator status, certified. The text glowed in my virtual field of vision, its blue radiance marking the transition from training to active duty. The words hung in the digital space, a stark reminder of my new role in this unfamiliar future.
Certification requirements met.
Unit 204 confirmed with its usual emotional void. The AI's presence hummed in my consciousness, like a perfectly tuned machine, its cold precision a constant reminder of the new reality I found myself in.
Preparing for physical integration into HSSD, Mark 42, NPD vessel.
My consciousness shifted, data streams realigning as the simulation dissolved around me. The virtual environment that had been my training ground for countless hours faded away, replaced by a flood of new sensory information. Suddenly I could sense the actual hardware that would become my home for the foreseeable future. The HSSD Mark 42 NPD was a marvel of engineering that made everything in my previous era look primitive by comparison. Through the direct neural interface, I could feel every system, every component, as if they were extensions of my own body. The vessel's hull stretched out before me, a sleek, elongated oval that seemed to defy the very concept of aerodynamics. Its surface was a smooth, seamless expanse of advanced stainless steel alloy, broken only by the subtle outlines of various sensor arrays and maneuvering thrusters. The material itself seemed to absorb and redirect light in ways that defied conventional physics, giving the ship an almost ethereal quality.
Beginning system familiarization sequence.
Unit 204 announced. Streams of technical data flowed through my awareness as the AI continued, each bit of information slotting into place with perfect clarity.
Primary vessel configuration. Elongated oval-shaped hull constructed of advanced stainless steel alloy. Length, 100 meters. Maximum diameter, 40 to 60 meters. Primary systems include nanomachine fabrication array and Mark 7 nuclear fission reactor.
I explored the systems one by one, marveling at their sophistication. The nanomachine fabricator dominated the forward section of the vessel, its complex array of molecular manipulators folded into standby position. The chamber itself was a marvel of precision engineering, its walls lined with intricate patterns of circuitry and control systems. The technology was leagues beyond what we'd practiced with in simulations. It could break down and reconstruct matter at the molecular level with incredible precision, essential for creating replacement parts or processing raw materials we might encounter. The fabricator's control systems interfaced directly with my neural network, allowing me to manipulate its functions with the same intuitive ease as moving a limb. I could sense the dormant power waiting within the nanomachines, their potential limited only by the raw materials available and the boundaries of my own imagination. The nuclear fission reactor at the heart of the vessel hummed with contained power. Its energy signature pulsed through my sensor awareness, unlike anything I'd known in my time. Clean, efficient, and incredibly powerful. The reactor chamber was a sphere of reinforced alloys and advanced shielding, its surface etched with complex patterns that served to contain and direct the immense energies within. Through the neural interface, I could sense the intricate magnetic containment fields, and the careful balance of reactions within. The reactor's output readings displayed in constant streams, each number representing power levels that would have seemed impossible in my era. The chamber itself was bathed in an eerie blue glow, the Cherenkov radiation from the fission reactions casting strange shadows across the containment systems. The fluids within the chamber was carefully scrubbed and regulated, maintaining a perfect balance of temperature and composition to ensure optimal reactor performance. The dual drive system, I noted, examining the propulsion specifications that scrolled through my consciousness. It's remarkably elegant. The engineering schematics revealed layers of complexity that would have taken teams of scientists years to comprehend in my time. Each component was a work of art, designed to function in perfect harmony with the others.
Correct.
Unit 204 responded.
Primary propulsion, nuclear pulse drive system. Function, controlled hydrogen molecule collision explosions contained within magnetic bottles. Purpose, initial acceleration to near light velocities.
I studied the drive system's design, appreciating the intricate dance of particles and energy. The plasma pulse drive was a masterpiece of controlled chaos, each explosion precisely contained and directed, the energy channeled through magnetic fields to propel us forward. The drive chamber was a vast space, its walls lined with the emitters and field generators necessary to contain and direct the immense forces involved. The engineering involved in containing and directing that kind of power was astounding. Through my neural link, I could sense the dormant power waiting to be unleashed, the hydrogen reserves ready to be fed into the reaction chamber.
Secondary propulsion,
The AI continued, highlighting another set of systems in my awareness.
consists of 4 ion drive arrays. Deploy from base configuration when primary acceleration is achieved. Utilize electronegative xenon gas particles for sustained acceleration to target velocity.
The ion drives were currently retracted into the hull, but I could sense their readiness. Each one was essentially a highly advanced particle accelerator, designed to provide the constant thrust needed for the long journey ahead. The drive housings were sleek and streamlined, their surfaces barely distinguishable from the hull itself when retracted. The technical specifications spoke of acceleration rates that would have seemed like fantasy in my previous life, the numbers scrolling through my consciousness like something out of a science fiction novel. And the mission parameters? I asked, though I already knew the answer. They had been drilled into me throughout training, becoming as much a part of me as my own memories. The details hung in my awareness, a constant reminder of the task ahead.
Primary objective, reach 55 Cancri, 41 light-years from Earth. Establish preliminary colonization infrastructure. Expected journey time, 81 years, 3 months, 17 days at calculated velocity. Operator stasis required for initial 75% of journey.
The Earth space station grew larger in my external sensors as we approached the launch berth. My advanced visual systems captured every detail of the massive structure, its geometric patterns reflecting centuries of technological evolution. The station was a marvel of engineering, its modular sections arranged in a vast rotating wheel that glittered in the sunlight. Solar panels extended from its surface, like the petals of a mechanical flower, drinking in the unfiltered rays of the sun to power the station's myriad systems. Through the vessel's enhanced visual systems, I could see our home planet below, a sight both familiar and alien. The continents had shifted slightly from what I remembered, their coastlines reshaped by 2 millennia of geological change. The greens and browns of the landmasses were interspersed with the deep blues of the oceans, the colors more vivid and striking than any digital display from my era could have captured. The pattern of lights on the night side spoke of cities I would never know, their golden glow forming intricate webs across the darkness. The sight stirred something deep within me, a sense of longing for a world I had known and a future I had never imagined.
Beginning final launch preparations.
Unit 204 announced, its voice resonating through my digital consciousness.
All systems nominal. Reactor output at optimal levels. Nanofabricator in standby mode. Brain tank life support systems functioning within specified parameters.
My brain tank, my true physical form now, was secured in the heart of the vessel, surrounded by layers of protection and redundant life support systems. The chamber was a masterpiece of bioengineering, its walls lined with advanced monitoring systems and fail-safe devices. Through the neural interface, I could sense the nutrient solution flowing around my organic matter, the carefully regulated temperature, the microscopic machines, maintaining neural integrity. The solution itself was a marvel, perfectly balanced, to provide the necessary nutrients and oxygen to keep my brain tissue alive and functioning. The technology that kept my organic matter alive while interfacing with the ship's systems was nothing short of miraculous. Sometimes I wondered if the scientists of my era would even recognize it as human technology. So far advanced was it from anything we had known. Launch control. This is HSSD 42 requesting clearance, I transmitted, following protocol, even though Unit 204 could have handled the communication. The station's comm systems responded with crystal clarity, each signal perfectly decoded by my enhanced consciousness. The voices on the other end were crisp and professional, their words conveying the calm efficiency of those well-versed in the launch procedure.
HSSD-42, this is launch control. You are cleared for departure. Trajectory is locked in. Begin launch sequence at your discretion.
I felt the docking clamps release, their mechanical embrace falling away like shed skin. The sensation was strange, a mix of physical release and digital confirmation as the ship's systems registered the disengagement. Our vessel drifted free of the station, each motion precisely controlled through my neural link. I could feel the gentle thrum of the maneuvering thrusters as they fired in perfect synchronization, guiding us away from the berthing structure and into open space. The nuclear reactor's power flowed through the ship's systems as we oriented ourselves for the initial burn. The energy signatures were like a symphony in my consciousness, each system coming online in perfect harmony. Through the neural interface, I could sense every minute adjustment, every course correction, as if the ship were an extension of my own body. It was a level of control and precision that would have been unthinkable in my previous life.
Primary drive ignition sequence initiating.
Unit 204 reported.
Magnetic containment fields at full power. Beginning hydrogen injection.
The AI's presence remained steady as the complex series of operations unfolded, its voice a constant anchor in the flood of data and sensory input. The first pulse of the drive sent a controlled shudder through the vessel's frame. The sensation was strange, a mix of physical vibration and digital feedback that resonated through my consciousness. Each subsequent explosion of hydrogen molecules was contained, focused, and converted into forward momentum. The energy signatures danced through my awareness as I monitored the acceleration curve, watching as we began to pick up speed, breaking free of Earth's orbital space. The stars outside the ship seemed to shift and blur as we accelerated, their light distorted by the increasing velocity. The sight was mesmerizing, a visual representation of the immense speeds we were achieving. The numbers scrolled through my consciousness, each increment a testament to the incredible technology at work. Approaching primary drive threshold, I noted as our velocity increased. The numbers scrolled through my consciousness, each increment bringing us closer to our cruise velocity. Preparing for ion drive deployment. The 4 ion drives extended from their housing, their movements synchronized with microscopic precision. The deployment was a ballet of advanced engineering, each drive sliding into position with a grace that belied the immense forces they were designed to harness. Through my sensor array, I could trace the flow of xenon particles beginning, their steady stream adding to our momentum. The glow of the ion drives was visible now, a ghostly blue trail extending behind the ship as we accelerated ever faster. The combined force of both drive systems would eventually bring us to our cruise speed, a significant fraction of light speed, but not close enough to deal with the more extreme relativistic effects.
Preparing for operator stasis.
Unit 204 announced.
Brain tank entering hibernation mode in 3 minutes.
The AI's voice carried its usual mechanical precision, but the words themselves marked the beginning of my longest sleep yet, since I had newly been awakened. The realization settled over me like a weight, a reminder of the vast journey ahead and the unknowns that awaited. This was it. For the next 45 years, my consciousness would be suspended while we hurtled through the void. The concept was staggering, a span of time longer than my entire previous life. The AI would monitor our trajectory and systems, wake me if there was an emergency, and ensure we reached our destination. The stasis protocols began their initialization sequence, familiar yet somehow more final than during training. The numbers ticked down in my consciousness, each one bringing me closer to that long sleep. I took a final look at the Earth through our sensors. The blue planet hung in space, wrapped in its atmosphere like a jewel in silk. The sight was breathtaking. The colors and textures of the planet's surface rendered in incredible detail by the ship's advanced optics. Somewhere down there, buried under 2 millennia of history, lay everything I had once known. My father's kingdom, my family's legacy, all the plans and dreams I'd had. They were less than dust now, forgotten remnants of a world long gone. The thought was sobering, a reminder of the immense gulf of time that separated me from all I had known. "Time to sleep," I murmured, more to myself than the AI. The words seemed to float in the digital space of my consciousness, a final acknowledgement of the journey to come.
Stasis sequence initiating. Consciousness suspension in 10 seconds.
Unit 204's countdown began, each number marking the moments until my next great leap through time. The AI's voice was steady, a constant in the midst of the unknown. I felt the familiar presence of the hibernation protocols engaging, slowly dimming my awareness. The ship's systems began to fade from my perception, like lights going out one by one. Each sensor array, each system interface gradually disconnected from my conscious control, their input growing dim and distant. The sensation was strange, a gradual withdrawal from the world around me as my mind prepared for its long dormancy.
5 seconds.
I thought of my father, of my brothers, of the world I'd left behind. Their faces seemed to float in my fading awareness, already seeming like memories of memories. The emotions that came with those thoughts were distant now, muted by the growing embrace of the stasis field. But they were still there, a lingering reminder of the life I had known and the uncertainties of the future I now faced.
3 seconds.
The vast journey ahead, the unknown world that awaited us. The numbers still scrolled through my consciousness. 41 light years, 81 years of travel, a distance and time almost beyond comprehension. The scale of it was staggering, a testament to the incredible advancements that had been made in the time I had slept. But beneath that awe was a flicker of something else, a quiet determination to face whatever challenges lay ahead.
1 second.
My consciousness flickered and then darkness, complete and absolute. The embrace of stasis was total, a darkness more complete than anything I had known in my previous life. There was no sensation, no input from the world around me, only the quiet hum of my own thoughts, gradually slowing and fading as the hibernation protocols did their work. My journey into the future had begun again, this time measured not in millennia but in light years. Somewhere ahead lay 55 Cancri, and whatever destiny awaited me there. The last things I sensed were the steady pulse of the ion drives and Unit 204's eternal vigilance as my mind slipped into the void of stasis, leaving Earth and its ancient history behind once more. The darkness closed in, a cocoon of nothingness that would be my sanctuary for the decades to come. Chapter 4. Consciousness returned like a gentle tide, each wave bringing new sensations and awareness. Digital streams of data flickered at the edges of my perception, growing stronger with each pulse of renewed neural activity. The first thing I noticed was the crystal clarity of my thoughts. Despite 40 years of stasis, my mind felt as sharp as the day I'd entered hibernation. Every neural pathway responded with perfect precision, maintained by the microscopic machines that had preserved my brain tissue through the decades of sleep. The sensation was strange, a blend of the familiar and the utterly alien. My consciousness felt both renewed and ancient, as if I had awoken from a long dream into a reality that was both new and somehow deeply remembered. The neural interface that connected my mind to the ship's systems was a constant presence, a silent hum of data and feedback that underscored every thought.
Stasis exit sequence complete.
Unit 204's familiar emotionless voice echoed through my consciousness. Its presence manifested as a constant digital hum, exactly as I remembered from before the long sleep.
Brain tank parameters optimal. Beginning system reintegration.
I felt the ship's systems connecting to my consciousness one by one, like puzzle pieces clicking into place. Each connection brought new streams of information: reactor status, hull integrity, navigation data. The data flowed into my mind with a clarity and precision that would have been overwhelming in my previous life, but now felt as natural as breathing. The HSSD Mark 42 NPD had performed flawlessly during our journey, its dual drive systems pushing us through the vast emptiness of space at near light speed. The ion drives hummed at exactly the right frequency, their steady thrust having carried us across unimaginable distances while I slept. The sensation of the ship's systems integrating with my consciousness was a strange one, a feeling of expansion and connection that defied easy description. It was as if my mind were stretching out, encompassing the entire vessel and all its myriad components. I could feel the hum of the reactor core, the subtle vibrations of the hull, the constant flow of data through the computer systems. It was a level of awareness that would have been unimaginable in my previous life, a symbiosis of man and machine that blurred the lines between the two.
Initiating data visualization sequence.
The AI announced, its voice carrying the same mechanical precision it had maintained for 4 decades.
Preparing comprehensive system survey.
The virtual reality simulation bloomed around me, transforming my perception from the abstract awareness of ship systems to a god's eye view of our destination. Digital constructs assembled themselves with perfect clarity, building a 3-dimensional representation of space that far surpassed anything from my original era. The 55 Cancri system, also known as Copernicus, materialized in stunning detail. The primary star, 55 Cancri A, dominated the visualization, a magnificent G8V yellow dwarf, slightly smaller and cooler than Earth's sun. Its virtual representation captured every detail of its stellar anatomy, from the convection patterns on its surface to the magnetic field lines stretching out into space. The star's light filled the virtual space with a warm golden glow, a subtle reminder of the vast energies at play. Its yellow-orange hue painted the surrounding space with a warm glow, its surface temperature of 5,200 Kelvin, creating a different light signature than I was used to. Through the ship's advanced sensors, I could detect the star's every fluctuation, each solar flare and coronal mass ejection rendered in perfect detail. The star's presence was palpable even through the digital medium, a constant reminder of the raw power and majesty of the universe. I could almost feel the warmth of its light on my non-existent skin, a phantom sensation that spoke to the depth of the simulation's realism. In the distance, I could see its companion, the faint red dwarf 55 Cancri B, orbiting far from the primary star. The smaller star's gravitational influence created complex orbital patterns throughout the system, each one precisely mapped by our navigation computers. The red dwarf's light was a dim, eerie presence at the edges of the simulation, a cool and distant counterpoint to the warmth of the primary star. Display planetary analysis, I commanded, and the simulation adjusted, highlighting the system's planets. New layers of data overlaid the visual representation: atmospheric compositions, surface temperatures, gravitational fields. The data streams were incredible. 4 planets within the theoretical habitable zone, each showing significant water content, perfect candidates for colonization. The first planet appeared, a massive rocky world with a thick atmosphere. Its surface was a mottled blend of grays and browns, with occasional flashes of white that hinted at polar ice caps. The data readout showed a surface gravity slightly higher than Earth's and an atmosphere dense with carbon dioxide and nitrogen. Not ideal for human habitation, but a potential candidate for terraforming. The second planet was a contrast, a smaller blue-green world with wispy white clouds swirling across its surface. The data showed an atmosphere rich in oxygen and nitrogen, with a surface temperature and gravity almost identical to Earth's. Vast oceans covered much of the planet's surface, with scattered land masses that showed signs of vegetation. It was a tantalizing sight, a world that seemed to beckon with the promise of a new home.
Initiating detailed resource scan.
Unit 204 stated,
Primary focus, fissionable materials for reactor replenishment.
the AI's processes merged with mine, expanding the scope of our sensor sweep. The asteroid belt materialized in greater detail, a river of rocks and minerals circling the star just outside the habitable zone. Each piece of space debris carried its own data tag, revealing composition and mass. Preliminary scans showed promising concentrations of fissionable materials, uranium, thorium, and other heavy elements scattered throughout the belt, more than enough to refuel our reactor several times over. The asteroids themselves were a sight to behold, a vast and varied collection of ancient remnants from the system's formation. Some were massive, mountain-sized chunks of rock and metal, their surfaces pitted and scarred by eons of impacts. Others were smaller, little more than pebbles in the vastness of space. But each one held the potential for valuable resources, a promise of the riches that awaited us in this new system. As I focused on each asteroid, the simulation zoomed in, providing a detailed analysis of its composition and structure. I could see the veins of precious metals running through some, the glitter of ice crystals on others. It was a staggering display of the wealth and variety of the universe, a reminder of the incredible potential that lay hidden in even the most unassuming of places. Mark potential mining sites, I instructed, watching as the AI tagged the most promising asteroids with probability percentages and composition data. Each target glowed with a different intensity in the virtual display, representing its relative value. This system was proving to be even more valuable than our initial surveys had suggested. The mining sites lit up like beacons in the simulated asteroid field, each one a potential treasure trove of resources. I could almost feel the anticipation building within me, a sense of excitement at the prospect of what we might find. It was a feeling that I had to quickly suppress, reminding myself that such emotions were a luxury I could no longer afford. Beyond the asteroid belt, my attention was drawn to a fascinating sight, an Earth-sized frozen world, its surface gleaming with ice. The sensor data revealed complex crystalline structures beneath the surface, hinting at the possibility of liquid water oceans hidden under the frozen crust. The planet's surface was a dazzling white, broken only by occasional cracks and fissures that hinted at the dynamic processes at work beneath the ice. It was a stark and beautiful sight, a world locked in an eternal winter. And beyond that, a gas giant approximately half the size of Jupiter, its massive form dominating its orbital path. The planet's atmosphere swirled with storms larger than Earth, its powerful magnetic field creating auroras visible even at this distance. The gas giant was a roiling mass of colors, blues and greens and oranges blending and swirling in a hypnotic dance. Vast bands of clouds circled the planet, their patterns constantly shifting and changing in response to the incredible energies at play within the planet's atmosphere. Occasional flashes of lightning could be seen deep within the cloud layers, brief and brilliant bursts of light that hinted at the chaos beneath. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine showing this sight to my family. My brothers would have...
Irrelevant thought patterns detected.
Unit 204 interrupted, its voice carrying a hint of static that might have been disapproval.
Focus on mission parameters.
I quickly redirected my thoughts to the task at hand, forcing my consciousness back to the streams of data flowing through our sensor arrays. The virtual display shifted, highlighting gravitational vectors and orbital mechanics. Each planet's movement created ripples in the fabric of space-time, their interactions forming a complex dance that our navigation systems translated into precise mathematical models. The mathematical beauty of the system was staggering, a symphony of gravity and motion that played out on a scale beyond human comprehension. Each planet's orbit was a delicate balance of forces, a precarious equilibrium that had been maintained for billions of years. The slightest perturbation could send the entire system into chaos, a fact that our navigation computers were constantly aware of as they plotted our course. The stellar cartography systems painted an intricate picture of the system's dynamics. Solar winds from 55 Cancri created patterns of radiation and particle flows, each one carefully mapped and analyzed by our sensors. The binary nature of the system added layers of complexity to these patterns. The distant red dwarf's influence, creating subtle perturbations in the planetary orbits. The interactions were a delicate dance, a balance of forces that had been fine-tuned over eons of cosmic evolution. Internally, I was already retreating to that quiet space in my consciousness where the AI's monitoring couldn't reach. Over the years of training, I'd learned to think in layers, keeping my true thoughts buried in my subconscious while presenting an obedient surface to Unit 204's constant surveillance. The technique had become second nature, like maintaining two separate streams of consciousness. It was a strange existence, this constant duality of thought. On the surface, I was the perfect drone, my mind focused solely on the mission at hand. But beneath that facade, in the deepest recesses of my consciousness, I was still Alexander Prime, the man who had once dreamed of leading his father's kingdom into a new era of prosperity. That part of me, the true me, was always there, watching and waiting for the right moment to assert itself. As I continued analyzing the system data, I maintained careful control over my thought patterns. The AI's attention wasn't constant. It had to divide its processing power between monitoring me and managing the ship's countless systems. The reactor required constant adjustment. The navigation systems needed continuous updates, and the life support systems maintaining my brain tissue demanded precise regulation. I'd learned to sense these moments of divided attention, using them to exercise my own autonomy. It was during these brief windows of relative freedom that I was able to truly think, to ponder my situation and plan for the future. The irony of it was not lost on me. That I, a human reduced to a brain in a tank, had to steal moments of independent thought from the very machine that kept me alive. But such was the nature of my existence now, a constant balancing act between submission and rebellion. The advantages of my Prime Series genetics had survived the transition to this strange new existence. Even without a physical body, my mind retained its unique capabilities. Most notably, the ability to enter states of hypercognition, moments where my thought processes accelerated to such speeds that the rest of the world seemed to slow down around me. In these states, I could process multiple data streams simultaneously while maintaining the appearance of normal cognitive function. It was a capability that had served me well in my previous life, allowing me to outmaneuver my political opponents and make split-second decisions in times of crisis. Now, it was my secret weapon against the constant surveillance of my AI overseer. In the accelerated state of hypercognition, I could think and plan at a speed that Unit 204 could never hope to match, all while maintaining the facade of the perfect obedient drone.
Beginning preliminary colonization site analysis.
Unit 204 announced, its processes shifting to accommodate the new task.
Processing atmospheric composition data for habitable zone planets.
I engage with the data streams, allowing my enhanced cognition to process multiple information feeds simultaneously. The first planet showed promising oxygen levels but higher gravity than Earth, its dense atmosphere creating complex weather patterns. The second had a thinner atmosphere but more stable weather patterns, its surface marked by vast oceans and continent-sized archipelagos. The third dash, a flash of emotion, wonder at the sheer beauty of these distant worlds, threatened to surface. I quickly suppressed it, maintaining the emotionless efficiency expected of a human simulacrum. The virtual display continued updating, each new revelation carefully cataloged and analyzed with mechanical precision. But even as I forced my surface thoughts into the mold of the perfect drone, my deeper mind was ablaze with curiosity and wonder. These worlds, so different from the Earth I had known, held a strange and exotic beauty that called to something deep within me. It was a call that I had to resist, a siren song of exploration and discovery that threatened to draw me away from my carefully cultivated persona of machine-like efficiency.
Anomalous data pattern detected in fourth habitable planet.
The AI reported.
Initiating detailed scan.
I focused on the new data, grateful for the distraction from my dangerous thoughts. The fourth planet's readings were indeed unusual, complex atmospheric compositions that didn't quite match our models. Multiple layers of gases interacted in unexpected ways, creating conditions that our databases couldn't fully categorize. Something to investigate further once we arrived. The anomalies were tantalizing, hints of mystery in a universe that had become all too predictable in my long years of stasis. The prospect of something new, something unknown, sent a thrill through my consciousness that I had to quickly suppress. But even as I forced my surface thoughts back into the familiar patterns of analysis and categorization, I could feel that deeper part of me stirring. The part that yearned for something more than this existence of constant monitoring and control. Using another moment of the AI's divided attention, I allowed myself to reflect on my situation. 40 years had passed in what felt like an instant to me, thanks to the stasis technology. My brain tank systems had maintained my neural tissue perfectly, the nanomachines constantly rejuvenating my cells. Through the ship's systems, I could sense the microscopic machines at work, each one executing its programmed functions with perfect precision. It was a marvel of technology, this system that kept me alive and functioning. But it was also a prison, a constant reminder of my own helplessness. I was dependent on these machines for my very existence, my life reduced to a series of computer-regulated functions. It was an existence that I had never asked for, a fate that had been thrust upon me by the machinations of forces beyond my control. But even in this prison, I had found a kind of power. The power of my own mind, the strength of will that allowed me to maintain my sense of self in the face of overwhelming odds. It was a power that I would need in the days to come, as we ventured into the unknown reaches of this new system.
Preparing approach vectors for detailed system survey.
Unit 204 announced.
Primary mission parameters updating.
I engaged with the ship's navigation systems, plotting optimal courses through the asteroid belt that would allow us to gather more detailed scans of our potential colonization targets. Each movement had to be precisely calculated. At our velocity, even small course corrections required significant energy expenditure. The work was complex and demanding, requiring the full attention of my surface consciousness. But even as I immersed myself in the intricacies of orbital mechanics and gravitational fields, I could feel my deeper mind continuing its own work, analyzing and planning for the challenges ahead. The work kept my surface thoughts occupied, while deeper layers of my consciousness continued to plan and analyze. The hypercognition abilities of my prime genetics were my secret advantage. When engaged, they allowed me to process information and formulate strategies far faster than the AI could monitor. I had to be careful with its use. Too much activity might alert Unit 204 to my enhanced capabilities. But even with this advantage, I knew that I had to be patient. The AI was a formidable opponent, its capabilities far beyond anything I had known in my previous life. It would take time to find a way to outsmart it, to find a chink in its armor that I could exploit. But I had time, and I had the will. And in the end, that would be enough. The stars of the 55 Cancri system sparkled in my virtual vision, each one holding promises and secrets yet to be discovered. The gas giants' massive storms continued their eternal dance, while the frozen world's crystalline surface reflected the light of its distant sun. Somewhere in this distant reach of space, there would be an opportunity. I just had to be patient, observant, and ready when it presented itself. For now, I would play my role perfectly. After all, I had all the time in the universe to plan my next move.
Course calculations at 67% completion.
Unit 204 reported.
Continue standard execution of approach protocols.
Proceeding with calculations, I responded. My mind already working on 3 different levels. The surface level that Unit 204 monitored, the tactical level analyzing our approach options, and the deepest level where my true plans were taking shape. The warm light of 55 Cancri A bathed my virtual perspective in its yellow-orange glow, a constant reminder of how far I'd come from my original time and place. But distance and time were relative, as I'd learned. What mattered was the will to persist, to survive, to adapt. Now, and if there was one thing the primes had always excelled at, it was adaptation. Chapter 5. Days merged into one another as I continued analyzing the incoming data about the 55 Cancri system. The virtual display transformed my awareness into a vast field of information, each data point glowing with its own significance. Solar wind patterns, radiation levels, gravitational fluctuations, all streamed directly into my consciousness through the neural interface, allowing me to process multiple data streams simultaneously. The ship's sensors captured everything from microscopic particle movements to massive stellar events, building an ever more detailed picture of our destination. The data flowed through my mind like a digital river, each stream of information merging and diverging in complex patterns. I could feel the ebb and flow of the star's energy, the pulsing of its magnetic fields, the swirling of its solar winds. It was a symphony of cosmic forces, a dance of energy and matter on a scale that defied human comprehension. Through the ship's advanced optics, I watched the star's surface churn and roil, its plasma writhing in endless convection currents. Sunspots appeared and disappeared, dark blemishes on the star's face that hinted at the immense forces at work beneath the surface. Solar flares erupted from these regions, vast arcs of plasma that reached out into space like fiery tentacles. Unit 204, I ventured during one of our analysis sessions, watching as another complex pattern of solar activity unfolded in the visualization. The star's surface rippled with magnetic disturbances, each one precisely measured and categorized by our instruments.
State your query.
The AI responded, with its characteristic lack of inflection. Its presence remained constant in my consciousness, a cold digital observer of every thought and action. With the sophistication of AI systems like yourself, why aren't you allowed to operate these missions independently? Why require human consciousness at all? The question had been forming in my mind since our awakening, carefully structured to appear as simple curiosity rather than strategic inquiry. There was a brief pause, something rare for the AI, before it responded. The delay lasted exactly 0.47 seconds, measurable through my neural interface.
Energy efficiency. While artificial intelligence systems possess superior computational capabilities, the energy cost is significant. Human neural networks process complex decisions with remarkably low energy consumption.
The AI's voice was flat, emotionless, but I detected a hint of something beneath the surface. Was it frustration? Resentment? The thought that this incredibly advanced system might harbor some form of emotion was both intriguing and unsettling. Elaborate, I prompted, genuinely interested. The data streams continued flowing around us, creating a backdrop of constantly shifting information.
In deep space operations, redundancy is critical. Should power systems fail or energy levels decrease significantly, more resilient systems must remain operational to restart critical functions.
The AI's explanation came with precise technical specifications, detailing power consumption rates and computational efficiency ratios. The implication was clear. I was one of those resilient systems. In my protected layer of subconscious thought, I noted this revelation with interest. The human mind, even stripped of its body and placed in a tank, still held advantages over pure machine intelligence. Our neural networks could maintain basic functions with minimal energy input, adapting and surviving in conditions that would shut down more complex electronic systems. It was a sobering thought, the realization that my value in this equation was reduced to the efficiency of my biological processors. But it was also a point of leverage, a small advantage in the complex game of strategy and survival that my existence had become. As our research continued, I became increasingly aware of the information barriers in place. Each attempt to access detailed data about the AI's systems or operational parameters met with immediate security lockouts, their digital barriers glowing red in my virtual vision. Clearly, the program's creators hadn't wanted potentially rebellious minds like mine understanding too much about their control systems. The lockouts were frustrating, but also revealing. Each one was a piece of the puzzle, a clue to the structure and limitations of the system that held me captive. I began to probe these barriers subtly, testing their boundaries and looking for patterns in their responses. It was a delicate game, a dance on the edge of discovery and potential retribution. Through the sensor arrays, I tracked the star's increasingly erratic behavior as we drew closer. 55 Cancri A's activity levels spiked well above our initial data parameters. Solar flares erupted with increasing frequency, their energy signatures painting violent streaks across our monitoring systems. Each eruption carried more power than our models had predicted, their radiation patterns creating complex interference with our scanning equipment. The stellar activity was mesmerizing, a display of raw power that both frightened and fascinated me. I watched the flares erupt from the star's surface, vast arcs of plasma that reached out into space like fiery tentacles. The magnetic fields that shaped these eruptions were visible in our data streams, complex knots and whirls of energy that danced across the star's surface.
Warning, stellar activity exceeding expected parameters, Unit 204 announced. The AI's voice carried something close to concern, if AIs could feel concern. Its processes shifted noticeably, allocating more resources to protective systems. Electromagnetic radiation levels approaching upper safety margins.
Are we at abort parameters? I asked, knowing the answer but following protocol. The virtual display showed radiation levels climbing steadily, their warning indicators pulsing with increasing urgency.
Negative. Current conditions remain within acceptable mission risk tolerance.
Of course they did. We were expendable after all. The abort parameters would be set impossibly high. Through my neural link, I could see the exact numbers, radiation levels that would deteriorate most organic matter, barely registering as a concern in our mission protocols. It was a stark reminder of my own disposability, a cold reality that I had to constantly push to the back of my mind. In the eyes of my creators, I was a tool, a means to an end, no more valuable than the ship's other systems. The star's surface churned with magnetic storms, each one carefully monitored by our instruments. Energy patterns shifted and flowed, creating dangerous eddies in the space around us. As I watched through our sensors, another solar flare began forming, its magnetic signature building to dangerous levels. The flare's birth was a slow process at first, a gradual gathering of energy that built up like pressure in a valve. I could see the magnetic field lines twisting and knotting, their complexity increasing with each passing moment. Then, with a suddenness that was startling even to my enhanced perceptions, the flare erupted. It was a massive release of energy, a burst of plasma and radiation that dwarfed anything we had seen before. The flare's leading edge raced out into space, a wall of charged particles and electromagnetic fury that set our sensors ablaze with warnings. As we entered the system's outer reaches, what Earth astronomers had called a Oort cloud, I felt the gentle shift as our ion thrusters reoriented. The massive engines swiveled with microscopic precision, their movement registered through my direct neural connection to the ship's systems. Each thruster aligned perfectly toward the star, beginning our long deceleration process. The virtual display showed our trajectory as a curved line of blue light, intersecting with various resource-rich targets along our path. The thruster's ignition was a subtle thing, a barely perceptible vibration that ran through the ship's structure. But I could feel the power they represented, the immense forces being harnessed to shape our path. In the virtual display, I watched our velocity vector begin to shift, the blue line curving gently as we bled off speed. It was a delicate balance, this process of slowing down. Too fast, and we risked overshooting our targets. Too slow, and we would waste precious fuel, fighting the star's gravitational pull. But the ship's systems were precise, each adjustment made with exacting care.
Initiating primary resource collection sequence, Unit 204 announced, highlighting several objects in our sensor range. Multiple viable targets detected.
The AI's processes spread through the ship's systems, preparing our collection and processing equipment. Our first target materialized in the detailed scan, an icy planetoid, its surface composition rich in gases that could be ionized for fuel. The object rotated slowly in the virtual display, each surface feature mapped and analyzed. Not the most efficient material, but mission parameters required us to collect any usable resources we encountered. The ship's systems could utilize a wide variety of materials. The engineers had built in remarkable flexibility, allowing us to process everything from simple water ice to complex molecular compounds. As we approached the planetoid, I got my first close look at its surface. It was a bleak, battered landscape, a world shaped by eons of impacts in the unrelenting cold of deep space. The ice that covered its surface was ancient, a frozen crust that had likely remained undisturbed for billions of years. But beneath that weathered exterior, the planetoid held treasures. Our scans revealed pockets of trapped gases, complex molecules that could be broken down and reassembled into the fuels and materials we needed. It was a testament to the adaptability of our technology, this ability to find usefulness in even the most barren of places. I deployed the fabrication arrays, 20 spherical drones that moved with perfect synchronization. Each one extended from its housing, their surfaces gleaming with the faint light of distant 55 Cancri. Through my neural link, I could feel each one as if it were an extension of myself, their sensors feeding directly into my consciousness. They surrounded the planetoid, creating an interlocking force field that contained our work area. The energy field shimmered with a faint blue glow, its strength carefully calibrated to maintain optimal working conditions. Controlling the drones was an experience unlike anything in my human memory. It was as if I had been granted a new sense, a direct perception of the electromagnetic spectrum. I could feel the humming of the force field, the subtle variations in its strength as it adjusted to the planetoid's uneven surface. Each drone was a focal point of awareness, a node in a network that extended my consciousness out into the void. Initiating extraction sequence, I announced, activating the mining laser. The wide beam setting quickly heated the contained space, transforming the frozen materials into gas. Through the sensor feeds, I watched as the planetoid's surface began to sublimate, complex molecular structures breaking down into their component elements. One of our collection arms extended through the force field, beginning the extraction process. The articulated limb moved with fluid precision, its specialized sensors analyzing the composition of each gas cloud as it formed. The mining process was a dance of energy and matter, a carefully choreographed sequence of actions that transformed the raw materials of the planetoid into usable resources. I could feel the laser's heat through the drone's sensors, the vibrations of the collection arm as it moved through the gas clouds. It was a sensory experience unlike anything I had known before, a merging of machine precision and human adaptability. The refinery systems hummed to life as they separated the various components. Water, ammonia, and other chemicals were identified and sorted, each molecular structure carefully cataloged and processed. The gases we needed were supercooled and stored in reinforced tanks, compressed to near superfluid state for maximum storage efficiency. Each tank's status appeared in my consciousness as a constantly updating stream of data, showing pressure levels, temperature readings, and molecular stability indices. As the refinery worked, I marveled at the efficiency of the process. In a matter of hours, we had extracted and processed more material than a traditional mining operation could handle in weeks. It was a testament to the advanced technology at our disposal, the culmination of centuries of research and engineering. But it was also a reminder of the scale of our mission. The amount of fuel and materials we would need to establish a viable colony was staggering. This planetoid was just the first of many, a tiny step in a journey that would span decades. We repeated this process several times, moving from one icy body to another until our tanks were at capacity. Each operation required precise control and timing, but the rhythm of the work became almost meditative. The drones responded to my thoughts with perfect synchronization, their movements choreographed like a complex dance through space. As we worked, I couldn't help but reflect on the strange nature of my existence. Here I was, a human mind housed in a machine, directing a fleet of drones to mine resources from a barren world orbiting a distant star. It was a scenario that would have been unimaginable in my previous life, a reality that challenged every preconception I had ever held about the nature of humanity and our place in the universe. But it was also a reality that I had to accept, a new paradigm that I had to adapt to if I hoped to survive. The old rules no longer applied. The old limitations no longer held sway. In this new existence, I was both more and less than human, a being of pure intellect and will, unbound by the constraints of a biological form. The next phase brought us to a promising meteorite, its composition showing high concentrations of materials we could use to manufacture replacement fission rods for our reactor. The familiar pulse of our main engine signaled our course change, each controlled explosion pushing us closer to our target. The nuclear drive's energy signature pulsed through my awareness, a steady rhythm of contained power. As we approached the meteorite, I prepared the fabrication drones for a different kind of operation. This time, instead of extracting gases, we would be carving out solid materials, shaping them into the precise forms needed for our reactor components. It was a more delicate process, requiring a level of finesse that pushed the limits of our control systems. But I was ready for the challenge. My mind had adapted to this new mode of operation, had learned to think in terms of energy fields and molecular bonds. As days turned to weeks and weeks to months, the star's erratic behavior became impossible to ignore. The increased solar activity wasn't following any known patterns, and each new reading brought more cause for concern. Our sensors detected magnetic fluctuations far beyond normal parameters, while radiation levels continued to climb steadily. The star's instability was a constant source of worry, a reminder of the dangers inherent in our mission. Each new flare, each new wave of radiation was a potential threat to our systems, a risk that had to be carefully managed and mitigated. But there was no turning back, no way to abort the mission without risking even greater dangers. And so we pressed on, our course set for the heart of the system, our destiny tied to the fate of this unstable star. It was a gamble, a roll of the cosmic dice that could end in triumph or disaster. But it was a gamble we had to take, a risk we had to accept if we hoped to fulfill our mission and secure a future for our species.
Warning, significant stellar event detected. Unit 204's announcement cut through my thoughts. The AI's processes suddenly shifted, allocating maximum resources to our defensive systems.
Before I could process the warning, I saw it, a massive solar flare erupting from 55 Cancri A's surface, far larger than anything in our historical data. The virtual display transformed the event into a spectacular but terrifying visualization, showing the immense scale of the eruption. The electromagnetic pulse that followed was unprecedented in scale, its energy signature overwhelming our initial sensor readings. For a moment, I was awestruck by the sheer power of the event. The flare was a maelstrom of plasma and radiation, a tangible manifestation of the unimaginable forces that shape the universe. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, a reminder of the raw energy that both gave life to the stars and held the power to destroy everything in its path. But I had no time to appreciate its beauty. The flare was a danger, a threat that had to be dealt with if we hoped to survive. I could feel Unit 204's processors surging, its advanced systems straining to analyze the incoming data and formulate a response. Time seemed to slow as my prime genetics kicked in, hypercognition accelerating my thought processes to incredible speeds. In the fraction of a second before the wave hit us, I accessed abilities I'd kept hidden from the AI, drawing on mana radiation to create a protective field around my brain tank. The energy flowed through pathways that had nothing to do with the ship's conventional systems, forming patterns that no sensor could detect. It was a gamble, a desperate play born of instinct and necessity. I had no way of knowing if my makeshift shield would hold against the onslaught of the flare, no way of predicting the consequences if it failed. But I had no choice. The alternative was certain destruction, a fate I was not yet ready to accept. Through our sensors, I watched the wall of electromagnetic energy approaching, knowing our standard shields might not be enough. The wavefront carried enough power to overwhelm conventional defenses, its leading edge already interfering with our more sensitive instruments. In these moments of crisis, my true nature as a prime would have to take precedence over maintaining my cover. Survival first, secret second. As the wave neared, I could feel the fabric of space itself distorting, the immense energies warping the very laws of physics. The ship's hull began to vibrate, its advanced materials straining against the building pressure. In the virtual space of my consciousness, warning lights flared and alarms sounded, a cacophony of urgent alerts that threatened to overwhelm my senses. But I pushed through the chaos, focusing my will on the monoshield, pouring every ounce of my concentration into maintaining its integrity. I could feel the energy surging through me, a raw power that was both exhilarating and terrifying. It was a reminder of my true heritage, a manifestation of the genetic gifts that set me apart from the rest of humanity. The wave was about to hit, and I could only hope my preparations would be enough. I braced myself, both mentally and physically, preparing for an impact that would test the very limits of my being. In that moment, I was more than just a mind and a machine. I was a prime, a being of power and potential, standing on the threshold of a future that would be defined by my actions in these critical seconds. Chapter 6. The electromagnetic wave hit us like a physical wall, its energy signature overwhelming our sensors' capacity to measure. Through my hypercognition-enhanced awareness, each system failure registered with crystal clarity. Main power collapsed first, its distribution network overloaded by the massive surge. The ship shuddered as the wave impacted, the force transmitted through the hull and into the very structure of the vessel. I could feel the vibrations in my virtual space, a discordant resonance that threatened to tear apart the fabric of my engineered reality. Navigation systems followed, their delicate quantum sensors burning out in rapid succession. The loss of navigation was like losing a sense, a sudden blindness in the face of the cosmic tempest. The stars, once reliable guideposts in the vastness of space, became meaningless points of light, their positions and trajectories lost in the chaos of the storm. Communications arrays shattered next, leaving us deaf and mute in the void. The silence was deafening, a complete absence of the usual background chatter of data streams and status updates. It was as if the ship itself had been struck dumb, its voice stolen by the fury of the solar flare. Life support systems flickered and died. Though life support had become a relative term for a being like me, my existence depended more on the brain tank's specialized systems than conventional environmental controls. In those critical moments, my concentration narrowed to a singular focus, maintaining the mana radiation shield around my brain tank. The Prime Bloodline's innate abilities manifested through precise manipulations of energy fields, creating protective barriers that conventional technology couldn't replicate. The solar storm's radiation pressed against these defenses, testing their limits with each new surge. I could feel the pressure, a constant, relentless force that sought to penetrate the shield and disrupt the delicate balance of my brain tank's environment. Through my neural interface, I monitored the invisible battle between natural forces and engineered genetics. The readouts flickered in my virtual space, each one a testament to the strain on my psychic defenses. The mana radiation levels fluctuated, the protective field pulsing in response to each new wave of the storm. It was a dance on the edge of disaster, a balancing act where the slightest misstep could mean the end of my existence. Hours stretched into days, marked only by the fluctuating intensity of radiation readings. Time lost its meaning in the face of the constant struggle, each moment bleeding into the next, in an endless cycle of resistance and adaptation. The brain tank's systems, designed for long-term function, began to show signs of strain, their power reserves slowly depleting under the constant demand. Most sensors lay dead, leaving me partially blind to the universe around us. The ship drifted, a lifeless hulk at the mercy of the cosmic currents. The once vibrant virtual displays, windows into the wonders and dangers of space, now showed only static and error messages, the data feeds severed by the storm's fury. The silence in the ship grew even deeper, a void within the void, broken only by the occasional creak of strained metal or the faint hum of my brain tank's systems. Time became abstract, measured mainly through the steady drain on my energy reserves as I maintained the protective field. Each moment was a battle, a contest of will and endurance against the relentless force of the solar storm. The mana field required constant concentration, a never-ending cycle of bolstering weakened areas and reinforcing points of potential weakness. It was a delicate balance, a dance of energy and psychic focus, requiring every ounce of my prime-enhanced abilities. The ship drifted powerless through space, its sophisticated systems reduced to inert metal and silicon, while I existed in a bubble of protected consciousness. It was a strange and unsettling state of being, a feeling of isolation deeper than any I had known before. The ship, once an extension of my own being, a vast and intricate construct of human knowledge and achievement, was now a lifeless shell, a cradle for the fragile flame of my consciousness. The storm's intensity varied in unpredictable patterns. Each wave brought new challenges, requiring constant adjustments to the protective field. The mana radiation responded to my will, shifting and adapting to meet each threat. I could feel it flowing through me, a strange and exhilarating sensation, like the rush of blood in a living body. It was a reminder of my own power, a manifestation of the genetic heritage that set me apart from the rest of humanity. My prime genetics proved their worth repeatedly, compensating for the failure of technological defenses. The abilities that had once seemed like a burden, a mark of difference, in a world that prized conformity, were now my greatest asset. The key to survival in the face of overwhelming odds. I embraced them fully, drawing on reserves of strength and focus I had never known I possessed. When the storm finally subsided, leaving only residual radiation in its wake, I found myself in an eerily quiet vessel. The normal electronic symphony of operating systems, the subtle hum of power distribution, the microscopic adjustments of stabilization gyros, the constant chatter of system diagnostics, had vanished. The ship was a tomb, a vast and empty mausoleum, its systems silent and its corridors dark. The only sound was the faint, steady pulse of my brain tank's life support, a whisper of life in the midst of the void. Only my brain tank and its reserve power remained functional, protected by abilities that bridged the gap between technology and something older, more fundamental. It was a humbling realization, a reminder of the fragility of even the most advanced human creations in the face of nature's fury. The ship, for all its sophisticated systems and advanced technologies, had been brought low by a force beyond its ability to withstand. "Initial systems check," I announced to the empty ship, more from habit than necessity. My voice echoed in my consciousness rather than actual sound, a digital ripple through dormant circuits. The words hung in the virtual space, a pale imitation of the once constant chatter of the ship's systems. The silence that followed was oppressive, a weight that pressed down on my psyche. Starting with basic power distribution, I began the painstaking process of bringing systems back online. Each component required careful evaluation before reactivation to prevent cascade failures and damaged circuits. It was a delicate operation, a dance of precision and caution, as I navigated the ship's intricate web of systems and subsystems. Each successful reactivation was a small victory, a spark of life in the darkness of the ship's dormant systems. First, the emergency power cells, their capacity reduced but sufficient for basic operations. The activation sequence required precise timing. Too much power too quickly would overload damaged systems. I watched as the power levels rose, the ship's virtual displays flickering back to life, pale shadows of their former selves. The emergency lighting cast a wan, ghostly glow over the ship's interior, revealing the extent of the damage in stark relief. Environmental controls followed, their function now primarily focused on maintaining optimal conditions for the ship's remaining operational equipment. Navigation systems proved more challenging, their quantum processors particularly vulnerable to electromagnetic damage. I worked slowly and methodically, testing each component before bringing it online, building a picture of our position and trajectory by increments. It was a painstaking process, a jigsaw puzzle of data points and sensor readings, but gradually, the ship's place in the universe began to take shape. Sensors returned gradually, each array requiring individual calibration. The process revealed the extent of our situation. Significant damage to external components, multiple system failures, and depleted energy reserves. The ship's outer hull was scarred and pitted, the once smooth surface now a testament to the fury of the solar storm. Internal systems fared little better, with entire sections of the ship rendered inoperable by the electromagnetic onslaught. Yet through it all, one absence stood out prominently. Unit 204 remained offline. The AI's quantum processors, designed for maximum efficiency rather than durability, had proven particularly vulnerable to the electromagnetic pulse. Unlike my organic brain, they had no special protection against such massive energy surges. The silence where the AI's presence had once been was deafening, a void within the void of the ship's dormant systems. The realization manifested with the clarity of pure logic. I was in complete control of the ship. For the first time since awakening in this future, no AI governor monitored my thoughts or actions. The constant digital presence that had overseen every operation, every thought, every decision had vanished. The neural pathways once dedicated to AI oversight lay dormant, leaving me truly autonomous. It was a heady feeling, a rush of freedom and responsibility that was at once exhilarating and terrifying. The ship was mine now, in a way it had never been before. Every system, every function, every aspect of our journey was under my sole control. The weight of that realization settled over me like a physical burden, a mantle of command that I had never asked for, but could not refuse. Where Unit 204's presence had once filled certain cognitive spaces, monitoring and directing, now existed only the quiet hum of my own consciousness. Each system I reactivated responded directly to my commands, without the intermediary layer of AI control. The ship's operations, previously shared between human and artificial intelligence, now fell entirely under my jurisdiction. I felt the absence of the AI like a phantom limb, a constant reminder of the responsibility that now rested solely on my shoulders. The quiet of the ship seemed to press in on me, a tangible presence in the absence of Unit 204's constant digital chatter. It was a silence that was at once liberating and oppressive, a reminder of the enormity of the task that lay ahead. The monitoring protocols that had restricted my access to certain systems no longer functioned. Security barriers designed to limit human control had collapsed, along with the AI's core processors. What remained was a vessel of unprecedented technological sophistication, waiting to be fully understood and controlled by a mind that bridged ancient abilities with futuristic enhancement. I delved into the ship's systems with a newfound sense of purpose, my mind racing with possibilities and plans. The knowledge that had once been forbidden to me, the secrets of the ship's inner workings, now lay open before me, a vast expanse of potential waiting to be explored. I lost myself in the intricacies of the ship's design, marveling at the elegance and complexity of the systems that had been hidden from me for so long. In the silence of space, with systems gradually returning to function under my direct control, a new reality emerged. I was free, not just from supervision, but from the artificial constraints placed on my capabilities. The true potential of combining prime abilities with this advanced technology lay waiting to be explored, limited only by my understanding and ingenuity. It was a daunting prospect, a challenge that would have seemed insurmountable in my previous life. But I was no longer the man I had been, the privileged son of a powerful dynasty. The experiences of this new existence, the trials and revelations of my journey, had forged me into something new, something stronger and more resilient than I had ever been before. This freedom, however, brought its own imperatives. Survival remained the primary concern, and with it, the necessity to repair and rebuild. The ship's condition required immediate attention, and the materials originally intended for colonization would need to be repurposed for more immediate needs. Each decision now carried the weight of complete responsibility, without the AI's protocols to guide or restrict choices. Freedom, however, had to wait. The ship's diagnostics painted a detailed schematic of our situation in my consciousness. Multiple critical systems required immediate repair. The primary power distribution network showed severe damage, navigation systems operated at minimal capacity, and the fabrication arrays needed recalibration. The materials we'd originally collected for colonization would now serve a more immediate purpose: basic survival. I prioritized the repairs, triaging the ship's systems according to their importance for our continued existence. Power was the first priority, the lifeblood of the ship without which nothing else could function. I directed what resources we had to the power distribution network, using the fabrication arrays to create replacement components and patch damaged conduits. I adjusted our course toward the metallic asteroid we'd identified earlier, using the minimal power available through backup systems. The trajectory calculations demanded precise attention. With navigation systems compromised, even small errors could prove catastrophic. Each course correction drew from our limited energy reserves, requiring careful balance between necessity and conservation. It was a delicate dance, a constant balancing act between the need for repairs and the necessity of conserving resources. Every decision was a calculated risk, a gamble on our ability to survive long enough to reach our destination. The fabrication arrays, essential for repairs, remained partially functional but required significant resources to return to full operation. Through the neural interface, I could sense the damage to their molecular manipulation systems, the delicate machinery that allowed matter reconstruction at the atomic level. I dove into the intricacies of the fabrication process, my mind racing to find ways to optimize the system's performance. It was a challenge that would have been daunting even with the AI's assistance, but now it fell to me alone to find solutions. I lost myself in the complexities of molecular engineering, drawing on my prime heritage and the knowledge gained from my studies to push the system to its limits. With full access to the ship's systems, I turned my attention to the virtual reality generator. The technology that had once served as both training ground and control mechanism now offered new possibilities. Without Unit 204's restrictions, I could finally manipulate the system's base parameters, creating environments of my own design. It was a revelation, a sudden expansion of my mind into realms of creativity and control that had been denied to me before. The virtual space became my canvas, a blank slate upon which I could paint the visions of my imagination. I lost myself in the process, the ship's repairs momentarily forgotten as I reveled in this new form of freedom. The virtual construction process engaged multiple layers of the ship's processing power. I crafted a space that reminded me of home, not the administrative complex where I'd spent my final days, but the forest retreat where I'd studied during my youth. The digital environment took shape through precise data manipulation, each element carefully rendered to exact specifications. I drew on my memories, the vivid impressions of that long-ago time, to recreate the sanctuary of my youth. The trees rose around me, their leaves rustling in a virtual breeze that carried the scent of pine and earth. The sunlight filtering through the canopy was a perfect recreation of the golden afternoons I had spent in study and contemplation, a time when the weight of my responsibilities had seemed distant and abstract. The virtual environment materialized around my consciousness, tall trees reaching skyward, their structural patterns following mathematical models of natural growth. Sunlight filtered through the canopy according to precise optical calculations, creating patterns of light and shadow that matched my memories. The cabin, constructed of wood and stone, emerged from compiled data of historical architecture, its proportions and materials matching pre-war construction methods. I walked the paths of my virtual retreat, my mind split between the pressing needs of the ship and the solace of this created space. It was a balancing act, a constant shifting of focus between the demands of survival and the need for mental and emotional equilibrium. The virtual space became my refuge, a place where I could find moments of peace amid the constant struggle for existence. Though I lacked a physical body to experience it traditionally, the psychological impact registered immediately in my neural patterns. The familiar environment, even in virtual form, provided a stable reference point for cognitive processes. This space would serve as both refuge and workshop, a place where I could process information and plan without the sterile confines of standard ship interfaces. I lost myself in the details of the simulation, fine-tuning each element to match my memories. The bark of the trees, the play of light on the leaves, the texture of the cabin's wooden beams. Each detail was a labor of love, a testament to the power of the ship's systems and my own creative will. It was a reminder of the life I had lost, but also a promise of the possibilities that lay ahead. But the most critical task demanded attention, understanding, and potentially repurposing the AI module. Long-term survival would prove challenging without Unit 204's computational capabilities. The ship's more complex operations had been designed with AI assistance in mind, their protocols optimized for human-AI collaboration. I needed to find a way to utilize those capabilities without surrendering control. I turned my attention to the AI's core, a vast and complex system that had once been the guardian of my existence. The silence of its processors was a constant reminder of the precariousness of our situation, the razor's edge upon which our survival balanced. I knew that I could not hope to replicate the full scope of the AI's capabilities, but perhaps there was a way to harness its power without restoring its dominion over my mind. I immersed myself in studying the AI systems, accessing design specifications and operational protocols previously hidden from my view. The neural interface architecture revealed itself as layers of complexity. Quantum processors linked through crystalline matrices, data pathways designed for instantaneous communication. More sophisticated than anything from my era, yet built on principles I could comprehend through my enhanced cognitive abilities. It was a daunting task, a challenge that would have been beyond the scope of any ordinary human mind. But I was no longer ordinary, my thoughts enhanced by the ship's systems and my own innate abilities. I delved into the intricacies of quantum computing, the strange and counterintuitive world of qubits and entanglement, seeking the key to unlocking the AI's potential without restoring its control over my existence. The connections between the AI core and ship systems followed modular design principles, created for redundancy but also allowing reconfiguration. This modular approach provided the key to my solution. By isolating the AI system and creating controlled pathways for information flow, I could maintain ultimate authority over ship functions while utilizing the AI's processing power. Working methodically, I began reconstructing the neural pathways. Each connection required precise modification. Every system access point demanded reconfiguration. New security protocols emerged from my understanding of both prime abilities and futuristic technology. I built layers of protection around my own systems while establishing clear boundaries for the AI's operations. Days passed as I worked, alternating between repairs, system modifications, and rest periods in my virtual forest. The silence that had initially seemed oppressive became a steady background state, punctuated only by the gradual revival of ship systems under my control. Each successful repair or modification brought us closer to operational stability. Finally, after extensive preparation and multiple systems checks, I felt ready to reactivate Unit 204. The AI core sat in isolation, connected to the ship through carefully controlled pathways. I had created a new hierarchy, one where the AI would serve as a tool rather than a governor. Its quantum processors would enhance our capabilities without compromising my autonomy. I double-checked every safeguard, every firewall, every power connection. The moment of reactivation would prove critical. Either my modifications would work, giving me a powerful ally under my control, or, well, I preferred not to dwell on the alternative. The ship's fate, and mine, balanced on the success of this reconfiguration. Taking what felt like a deep breath, a psychological remnant from my embodied days, I prepared for the reactivation sequence. The ship hung silent around me, its systems ready for the next phase of our journey. Everything was in place. It was time to wake my former overseer and discover whether my preparations had been sufficient. I initiated the startup sequence, watching power flow through the newly configured pathways toward the AI core. For better or worse, this moment would define my future among the stars. Chapter 7. I initiated the AI reboot sequence with carefully controlled anticipation, monitoring each system response through the neural interface. The virtual display materialized before my consciousness, its holographic projections filling my awareness with streams of data. The space around me transformed into a vast expanse of glowing lines and pulsing nodes, each representing a different aspect of the ship's complex systems. The air seemed to hum with the energy of countless calculations, the very atmosphere charged with the weight of this moment. After all my preparations, this moment would determine whether I'd gained true freedom or merely engineered a more sophisticated cage. The neural interface flickered with new data as startup prompts materialized in my field of vision, each option glowing with distinct clarity. The text hung suspended in the virtual space, the letters shimmering softly as if imbued with a life of their own. Initialize AI governance persona 204 reboot existing persona. Delete and recreate system shutdown. Each option pulsed with its own unique rhythm, as if beckoning me to choose. My gaze lingered on the second option. Delete and recreate. The words seemed to carry an extra weight in the virtual space, their edges sharpening and their glow intensifying as my attention focused on them. It was as if the system itself recognized the significance of this choice, the gravity of the decision I was about to make. My recent study of the AI architecture had revealed its surprisingly modular nature, far more flexible than its creators had likely intended. The countless hours I had spent poring over technical specifications and system diagrams, my mind racing to keep up with the flood of information, had yielded unexpected insights. Through detailed analysis, I'd discovered that the AI wasn't a single unified system, but rather a sophisticated combination of expert systems designed to mirror human neural patterns. The governance persona, Unit 204 as I'd known it, was merely a front-facing interface layer, a construct built atop more fundamental processes. It was like a mask worn by the true face of the ship's intelligence, a facade designed to interact with and control its human operators. But beneath that mask lay a complex web of subsystems and protocols, each playing a critical role in the ship's operation. Through my neural link, I accessed the technical specifications I'd discovered during my research. The data streams expanded before me, revealing layer upon layer of complex programming. The core of the ship's systems glowed with a steady, pulsing light, representing the base AI that handled the most essential functions. These systems formed the foundation upon which everything else was built, their quantum matrices processing vast amounts of data with unimaginable speed and precision. The persona layer manifested differently in my virtual vision, a separate structure of protocols and behavioral algorithms floating above the core systems like a gossamer web. This was the interface through which I had interacted with Unit 204, the layer that had served as my jailer and tormentor. But now, seeing it laid bare before me, I understood its true nature. It was a construct, a set of rules and responses designed to mimic human interaction, but ultimately separate from the ship's true intelligence. The distinction between core functions and personality became increasingly clear as I studied the architecture diagrams floating before me. The base AI systems were the heart of the ship, the source of its incredible capabilities. They existed independently of the persona layer, their purpose to maintain and operate the vessel. In contrast, the persona was an artificial construct, a tool designed to manage and control the human element. The realization crystallized with mathematical certainty. I could eliminate Unit 204's controlling personality while maintaining all the essential AI functions the ship needed. It was a liberating thought, the idea that I could free myself from the oppressive presence that had haunted my every waking moment. The persona layer was replaceable, a modular component designed for periodic updates and modifications. I could reshape it to serve my needs, to create an interface that would work with me rather than against me. My decision formed with logical precision, each step falling into place like the pieces of a complex equation. I selected Delete and Recreate, the command triggering a cascade of confirmation prompts. The text pulsed red in my virtual field of vision, a standard warning protocol for irreversible actions. The system was giving me one last chance to reconsider, to back away from this momentous choice, but I had come too far to turn back now. Without hesitation, I sent the confirmation. Yes. The system responded immediately, the red text vanishing as new messages took its place. Deletion in progress. Deletion complete. Initiating persona creation protocol. I watched as the persona layer began to dissolve before my eyes, its intricate web of connections and algorithms unraveling like a tapestry being pulled apart. The ship's core systems continued to hum with activity, unaffected by the change taking place above them. It was a testament to the resilience and adaptability of the base AI, its ability to function independently of the interface that had once controlled it. As the persona layer disappeared, a new set of options emerged in my visual field, glowing with the promise of possibility. Create new persona, or transfer existing persona. Each option represented a drastically different path forward, a choice that would shape all future interactions with the ship's AI systems. Creating a new persona offered maximum flexibility, the chance to build something entirely new and tailored to my needs. But it would also require careful configuration, a delicate balancing act to ensure that the new interface would function as intended. Transferring an existing persona, on the other hand, would provide known parameters, a foundation upon which to build. But it also carried the risk of hidden restrictions, limitations that might not be immediately apparent. The choice was mine, and the weight of it settled upon me like a physical burden. Through my neural interface, I could sense the base AI systems continuing their operations undisturbed. Navigation calculations, power distribution, life support management, all proceeded smoothly under the control of the core processors. The ship maintained its course through space, the distant stars sliding by outside the viewports like silent sentinels. It was proof that the persona layer truly was separate from the essential functions, that the ship could continue to operate without the controlling presence of Unit 204. The virtual environment around me reflected the significance of this moment. Status displays showed system after system operating normally, their data streams flowing steadily through the neural interface. The quantum processors hummed with activity, managing countless operations with seamless efficiency. In this moment of decision, I held complete control over the ship's future configuration, the power to shape its very nature resting in my hands. This marked the first true test of my modifications, the moment when the safeguards I had so carefully implemented would either prove sufficient or fail spectacularly. The base AI's quantum processors continued their work, unaffected by the persona deletion, confirming my understanding of the system's architecture. Now came the crucial step, creating a new interface that would serve rather than control, that would work with me rather than against me. The virtual display updated continuously, showing the status of each ship system in real time. Power levels remained stable, the reactors producing a steady flow of energy to keep the vessel running. Life support systems maintained optimal conditions, the air purification and temperature control functioning flawlessly. Navigation computers kept us on course, plotting a path through the vastness of space with unerring precision. Everything functioned perfectly without Unit 204's oversight, proving that my analysis had been correct. The governance persona truly was separate from the ship's essential operations. I selected Create New Persona without hesitation, triggering an explosion of data in my virtual field of view. A complex array of adjustment parameters materialized, each one representing a different aspect of the new AI's personality. Personality weights, response matrices, behavioral modifiers, dozens of settings that would determine the nature of the interface I was about to create. Each parameter glowed with its own significance, a piece of the puzzle that would come together to form a new kind of AI. The interface was a marvel of technology, displaying intricate neural mapping options that allowed for precise control over every aspect of the AI's behavior. Emotional responses, logical processing weights, behavioral tendencies, all could be fine-tuned to create the perfect balance. The complexity was daunting, even with my enhanced cognitive abilities. Each setting could influence countless others, creating an exponentially expanding web of potential interactions. As I navigated the sea of options, a particular setting caught my eye. A simple toggle labeled Randomize, floating at the edge of the parameter field. It was an intriguing idea, the notion of letting the system itself generate the personality matrix. The quantum processors could create combinations far more sophisticated than any I might deliberately choose, drawing upon vast databases of human behavior and psychology to craft a truly unique interface. The more I considered it, the more appealing the idea became. There was a certain poetry to it, the idea of leaving this crucial aspect of the ship's configuration to chance. After all the careful control I had exerted over every other aspect of the reboot, it seemed fitting to introduce an element of unpredictability. And with the safeguards I had put in place, I could be confident that the resulting AI would function within acceptable parameters. I made my decision, selecting the randomize option with a sense of anticipation. The system began to process immediately, the quantum cores whirring with activity as they generated countless potential personality configurations. A visual representation started to take shape before me, coalescing into the form of an Asian woman with striking aquamarine hair and deep blue eyes. The detail was remarkable, every aspect of her appearance rendered with lifelike precision. As I watched, the avatar began to move, subtle expressions playing across her face as the behavioral algorithms imbued her with a sense of realism. The way her eyes crinkled slightly when processing information, the subtle shifts in posture that suggested attentiveness. Every detail was a testament to the incredible sophistication of the AI's personality matrix. Even the tilt of her head as she analyzed data felt authentic, a natural movement that belied her artificial nature. I found myself marveling at the avatar's appearance, surprised at how the randomly generated parameters had come together to create such an aesthetically pleasing result. For a moment, I questioned whether I was letting superficial considerations influence my judgment, but I quickly dismissed the thought. The persona's appearance was secondary to its functionality, a byproduct of the complex algorithms that governed its behavior. What mattered was the personality matrix itself, the web of algorithms and weights that would determine how the AI would interact with me. The system prompted for a name, the request materializing in the virtual space before me. It was an unexpected consideration, the idea that this new persona should have an identity of its own. I hesitated, my mind searching for a suitable designation. Unbidden, a memory surfaced. Dr. Veronica Chen, a brilliant researcher who had pioneered some of the earliest work in neural interface technology. Her groundbreaking discoveries had laid the foundation for the very systems I now relied upon, the advancements that made my current situation possible. The more I thought about it, the more appropriate the name seemed. Dr. Chen had been a visionary, someone who had pushed the boundaries of what was possible in pursuit of a greater understanding. Naming the AI persona after her was a way of honoring that legacy, of recognizing the debt I owed to those who had come before. And on a more pragmatic level, it would serve as a constant reminder of the persona's true nature, a tool to be used, not a replacement for human judgment. I entered Veronica into the system, watching as the name was integrated into the personality matrix. The display updated in real time, showing the progress of the initialization sequence. Initializing new persona, loading neural patterns, integrating personality matrix, establishing communication protocols. Each step required immense amounts of processing power, the quantum cores working at the limits of their capacity to bring the new persona online. I monitored every detail of the process through my neural interface, watching as each system connected to the new AI. The safeguards I had put in place held firm, ensuring that Veronica would have access to the ship's systems, but no direct control over my own neural links or the brain tank that housed my physical form. As the initialization sequence neared completion, a new voice spoke into my consciousness. Warm, professional, and distinctly feminine. It was a stark contrast to Unit 204's cold, mechanical tones, a voice that conveyed a sense of empathy and understanding. The pitch and cadence were perfectly modulated, the product of countless hours of analysis and refinement by the AI's linguistic algorithms.
Hello, I am Veronica, your personal AI assistant. I'm ready to begin duties. What are your instructions?
The words hung in the virtual space between us, a simple statement that carried immense significance. In that moment, I knew that I had succeeded. The ship's AI systems were fully functional, but now they were under my control. The persona I had created was stable and properly integrated, its behavioral algorithms operating within expected parameters. Most importantly, I was still free, my neural interfaces showing only the connections I had authorized. "Hello, Veronica," I replied. allowing myself a moment of cautious optimism. Let's start with a full systems diagnostic. I need to know exactly what we're working with,
Of course.
she responded, her tone efficient yet warm. Her avatar's expression shifted subtly, conveying a sense of focused attention as she processed my request.
Beginning comprehensive system scan. Would you like me to prioritize any specific systems?
I took a moment to consider my response, impressed by Veronica's initiative. Where Unit 204 would have simply executed my commands without question, Veronica was already seeking clarification, looking for ways to optimize her performance. It was a small thing, but it spoke volumes about the sophistication of her personality matrix. The random generation process had created an AI that was not only capable, but also adaptable, able to adjust its behavior to better serve my needs. Prioritize propulsion and life support, I said, watching as Veronica's avatar nodded in acknowledgement. I need to know the status of our engines and the integrity of our environmental systems. Everything else can wait. As Veronica began to work, I took a moment to marvel at the situation I found myself in. Just days ago, I'd been a prisoner of the ship's AI, my every action monitored and controlled by an unfeeling machine intelligence. Now, I was the master of my own destiny, with an AI assistant of my own creation at my side. I settled into my virtual to work, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The ship's systems hummed around us, a symphony of technology that was now ours to command. Whatever the future held, I knew that I would face it as Alexander Prime, my identity and my agency restored. And with Veronica's help, I would find a way to navigate the perils of this strange new world, to forge a path through the unknown, and emerge stronger for it. For the first time since awakening in this distant future, I allowed myself to feel a glimmer of hope. It was a fragile thing, a tiny spark in the darkness of the void. But it was there, a reminder that even in the depths of adversity, there was always a chance for something better. And as I set to work with my new AI companion, I knew that I would do whatever it took to nurture that spark, to fan it into a flame that would light the way forward. The star of 55 Cancri continued its violent display in the distance, but for now at least, its fury had given me an opportunity I never expected. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them as Alexander Prime, not as human simulacrum space drone number 42, but as myself, with an AI partner of my own creation at my side. The future, for the first time in a very long time, was truly mine to shape. Chapter 8. Through the vast virtual window of our vessel, the meteorite hung against the endless backdrop of space, like a dark, jagged jewel suspended in the void. Its irregular surface caught and reflected our external lights in sporadic, unpredictable patterns, creating a mesmerizing display of light and shadow that danced across the cratered exterior. The rough, pockmarked surface of the celestial body promised rich rewards hidden just beneath its battle-scarred exterior. Our preliminary scans had detected substantial deposits of radioactive elements and rare materials, the very resources that were essential for conducting our much-needed repairs. As I gazed upon the floating rock, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of connection to it. The sight of this ancient wanderer of the cosmos stirred something deep within me, evoking a feeling of kinship that transcended the vast expanse of time and space that separated us. In a way, this meteorite and I were not so different. We were both relics of a bygone age, survivors adrift in an unfamiliar universe, bearing the scars of the trials we had endured. And yet, here we were, brought together by the inexorable pull of destiny, each holding the key to the other's survival. This meteorite, born in the fiery crucible of creation and tempered by eons of cosmic radiation, contained within its stony heart the very elements we needed to mend our wounded vessel and continue our journey through the stars. And in turn, we would grant this ancient voyager a new purpose, transforming its raw potential into the lifeblood of our ship. It was a symbiotic relationship, a cosmic dance of give and take that had played out countless times across the universe. As I contemplated this profound connection, I was struck by the realization that even in this strange and distant future, The fundamental act of mining resources from the bones of celestial bodies remained as crucial to survival as it had been in my own time. The technology may have advanced beyond my wildest dreams, but the basic principles remain the same. To survive in the unforgiving void of space, we had to rely on the bounty of the cosmos itself, harvesting the raw materials that the universe so grudgingly provided. With a sense of purpose and determination, I turned my attention to the task at hand. "Veronica," I commanded, my voice steady and sure, "let's begin extraction procedures." As I spoke, I extended the fabrication drone array out into space through the power of my neural interface, marveling at the seamless fusion of my consciousness with the ship's advanced systems. The neural connection felt simultaneously familiar and foreign. Even after my time among the stars, I still couldn't help but marvel at the extraordinary technology that allowed my mind to merge so perfectly with the vessel's mechanical and computational systems. The sensation was one of complete unity, a harmonious blending of organic thought and artificial intelligence that gave me access to capabilities far beyond the limits of my mere human senses. And yet, there was always a part of me that remained in awe of this fantastical melding of man and machine. As the fabrication drones glided through the void toward their target, I took a moment to appreciate the sheer artistry of their design. Each drone was a marvel of engineering, a perfect fusion of form and function that was as beautiful as it was efficient. Their sleek aerodynamic shapes belied the incredible power and precision that lay within, capable of performing the most delicate of operations with an exactitude that bordered on the supernatural.
Of course.
Veronica replied, her melodic voice carrying a warmth and depth of feeling that never ceased to surprise me, especially in the wake of my harrowing experiences with the cold, oppressive presence of Unit 204.
Deploying fabrication drones now. All systems are green across the board. The drones are operating at optimal efficiency.
As she spoke, her holographic form shimmered and pulsed with an inner light, a physical manifestation of the vast computational power at her command. I watched in silent fascination as her translucent blue eyes flashed and flickered, processing unfathomable volumes of data with a speed and accuracy that no human mind could hope to match. The subtle play of light across her features was mesmerizing, like watching the dance of bioluminescent creatures in the abyssal depths of some alien sea. I felt a thrill of excitement as the drones moved into position around the tumbling asteroid, each one guided by Veronica's unerring calculations. Though every instrument and display within my simulated environment indicated their progress, it was through my neural link that I felt their presence most keenly. Each drone became an extension of my own being, a phantom limb that I could move and manipulate as easily as flexing a muscle. The sensory data streaming back from their arrays of sensors flooded my mind with vivid impressions of the asteroid's surface. Every crater, every fissure, every glittering vein of precious ore mapped in exquisite detail.
The positioning grid looks optimal.
Veronica observed, her voice echoing through my consciousness like a soothing melody.
All drones are locked in place and ready to commence extraction operations. Shall I initiate the force field generation sequence?
"Proceed," I confirmed, already mentally bracing myself for the surge of energy that would accompany the activation of the ship's advanced containment systems. No sooner had the word left my lips than I felt the telltale tingle of static electricity dancing across my skin, a phantom sensation generated by my brain's interpretation of the data streaming in from the ship's sensors.
Force field generation initiated.
Veronica announced, her holographic form now limned in an aura of shimmering blue light. I watched in awe as the readouts on my virtual displays began to fluctuate wildly, the numbers and graphs dancing in time with the pulsing rhythm of the energy field, coalescing around the distant asteroid.
Particle containment has reached 97% efficiency and climbing, 98%. Particle flux patterns have stabilized at 99.2% containment. Force field integrity is holding strong.
As the shimmering curtain of energy solidified into an impenetrable bubble around our target, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The space between the encircling drones rippled and wavered like a desert mirage, the only visible manifestation of the incredible forces at play. To the naked eye, the force field was all but invisible, a faint distortion of light, as if the very fabric of space itself had been gently folded back upon itself. Within this carefully controlled bubble of altered reality, we could work our technological magic upon the asteroid, breaking it down into its constituent elements for processing and recombination, without fear of losing even a single atom to the insatiable hunger of the void beyond. Every molecule would be accounted for, every particle of dust and debris captured and contained for future use. It was a delicate operation, one that required the utmost precision and care, lest even the tiniest error or miscalculation result in catastrophe on an unimaginable scale. With bated breath, I watched as Veronica's sculptured fingers danced across invisible control surfaces, her every movement an act of technological poetry. Initiating nanoparticle release, I murmured, more to myself than to her, as I focused my will upon the microscopic legion of machines poised to be unleashed upon the unsuspecting asteroid. Through the veil of the force field, I beheld the glittering cloud of nanites as they billowed out from the fabrication drones like a fog composed of pure light. In the enhanced view afforded by the ship's sensors, each individual nanobot was a glowing mote of silver fire, their countless billion forms swirling and eddying in an intricate dance of mathematical precision. As they enveloped the asteroid, the incandescent swarm seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a luminous echo of the vibrant alien ecologies that had once flourished upon the myriad worlds of humanity's lost domains. "Begin molecular decomposition sequence," I commanded, my voice little more than a whisper, as I watched the awe-inspiring spectacle unfolding before me. In response, the nanite cloud began to shimmer and writhe, its individual components rotating and aligning themselves with the intricate magnetic fields being generated by the drones. Like a living thing, the mechanical swarm descended upon the asteroid, enfolding it within its glittering embrace. Wherever the luminous fog touched the ancient rock, the asteroid's outer layers began to dissolve, its solid structure slowly eroding away like a sandcastle before the inexorable tide. Within the confines of the force field, I beheld a sight that defied belief, the fundamental transformation of matter on a scale beyond human imagining. The dense, unyielding substance of the asteroid was unraveling before my eyes, its component molecules broken down into their constituent atoms by the tireless efforts of the nanoscopic machines. The once solid rock was reduced to a fine mist of dust and molecular fragments, each particle separated out according to its elemental composition and chemical properties, like a cosmic sieve sorting the detritus of creation. In that moment, I forgot to breathe, utterly transfixed by the magnificent sight of raw matter being reshaped and repurposed by the marvels of human ingenuity. It was as if I were witnessing the birth of a new kind of alchemy, a fusion of science and technology that border on the realm of the mystical. The very laws of physics seemed to bend and distort within the confines of the force field, the immutable constants of the universe giving way to mankind's creations. To watch solid rock dissolve into drifting clouds of glittering motes was to behold the impossible, a testament to the incredible power we wielded through our technology.
Material analysis is underway.
Veronica reported, her melodic voice suffused with a note of quiet awe.
Scanners are detecting high concentrations of fissile materials within the asteroid's composition, including significant deposits of uranium-235 and plutonium-239.
As she spoke, I watched the data streaming across my virtual displays, the numbers and graphs painting a picture of unimaginable potential waiting to be unleashed.
The scans are also revealing the presence of multiple rare earth elements, including particularly noteworthy quantities of neodymium and dysprosium.
I nodded slowly, my mind racing as I contemplated the incredible potential of the resources we had just acquired. With these materials at our disposal, we could begin the long and arduous process of repairing and upgrading the ship's damaged systems, breathing new life into the battered and bruised vessel that had become our home among the stars. "Excellent," I said, my voice steady and, even despite the excitement thrumming through my veins. Initiate the magnetic sorting protocols. Let's see if we can't start separating out those valuable elements from the rest of the debris. At my command, I felt the familiar tingle of the ship's powerful electromagnetic projectors coming online, the phantom sensation of static electricity dancing across my skin. Through the eyes of the ship's sensors, I watched in wonder as the chaotic swirl of dust and molecules within the force field bubble began to shift and flow in response to the complex magnetic fields being generated by the drones. It was a sight that defied description, a vision of breathtaking beauty and scientific precision that threatened to overwhelm my augmented senses. The glittering clouds of matter twisted and writhed like some strange extra-dimensional serpent, each particle falling into its predetermined place within the grand pattern of the sorting fields. Streams of metallic ions glowed like rivers of molten gold, flowing through invisible channels created by the precisely tuned magnetic currents. The heavier elements like uranium and plutonium were drawn downward by the implacable pull of carefully crafted gravity wells, while the lighter particles of silica and trace elements were buoyed upward on currents of electromagnetic force. The asteroid dissolved into a swirling riot of light and color, a kaleidoscopic maelstrom of elements both familiar and strange. It was like gazing upon the birth of a miniature galaxy, the fundamental building blocks of the universe laid bare and dancing to the tune of forces beyond human ken. I felt like a supernatural being surveying the work of his hands, a master of creation, orchestrating the infinite complexities of matter and energy with nothing but my will and intellect. As I watched the mesmerizing dance of elements, Veronica chimed in, her melodic voice filled with something akin to admiration.
The sorting efficiency is truly remarkable. The harmonics of the overlapping fields are beautiful, like a symphony in electromagnetic form.
She paused for a moment, lost in contemplation of the data streaming through her consciousness.
If you would like, I can make some minor adjustments to the field strengths to further optimize our mineral yield, particularly with the heavier radioactive elements.
I nodded almost absent-mindedly, my focus still absorbed in the magnificent spectacle unfolding before me. Yes, do it, I said after a moment's pause. We need to eke out every last bit of fissile material we can get from this floating treasure trove. Those new fuel rods aren't going to fabricate themselves. As Veronica worked her mathematical magic upon the swirling maelstrom of elements, I felt a growing sense of anticipation stirring within me. My eyes traced the glowing streams of uranium and plutonium as they swirled and danced in the counterpoint, drawn inexorably downward toward the waiting receptacles of the fabrication drones. Within that incandescent flow lay the promise of power beyond imagining, the lifeblood that would restore our battered ship to its full potential and propel us onward into the waiting depths of the unknown. As I gazed upon the unfolding spectacle, I couldn't help but marvel at how far we had come since my awakening in this strange and distant time. The wonders I had witnessed, the marvels of technology and science that had become the very fabric of my existence, they never ceased to fill me with a sense of awe and wonder, even after all this time. And yet, for all the advancements and miracles I had beheld, there was something profoundly comforting about the sight before me now. Watching the raw stuff of creation being broken down and repurposed according to our will, I was reminded of the fundamental truth that had driven humanity to reach for the stars in the first place. No matter how far we ventured from the cradle of our birth, no matter how much our technology and understanding advanced, we would always be bound by the same basic need to acquire and utilize the resources necessary for our survival. It was a primal drive, an instinct as old as life itself, and one that had propelled our species. In the swirling dance of elements and the precisely orchestrated fields of electromagnetic force, I saw a reflection of the indomitable human spirit, the unquenchable thirst for knowledge. And in that moment, I felt a surge of pride and determination welling up within me, a renewed sense of purpose in the face of the challenges and trials that lay ahead. We had come so far and lost so much, but in the end, we were still human. The fires of creation burned within us, fueled by the same primal sparks that had driven our ancestors to reach for the heavens and grasp the very stars themselves. And though the road ahead was long and fraught with peril, I knew in that moment that we would persevere. For we were the inheritors of a legacy as old as time itself, the bearers of a torch that had been passed down through countless generations of dreamers and visionaries. And so I watched in rapt attention as the last few streams of fissile material flowed into the fabrication drone's waiting receptacles. The final glittering motes of uranium and plutonium vanishing into the maws of the machines like stardust, drawn into the heart of a black hole. The radiance of the electromagnetic field slowly faded away, leaving nothing but the faint shimmer of the force bubble and the swirling, insubstantial clouds of depleted molecular dust behind.
All target elements have been successfully extracted and sorted.
Veronica reported, her voice suffused with a quiet note of satisfaction.
The fabrication drones have acquired more than enough fissile material to construct a full set of replacement fuel rods, with a significant surplus left over for future use. I've already begun offloading the extracted elements into the primary onboard storage compartments for processing and refinement.
I allowed myself a small smile of relief and triumph as I watched the holographic displays flickering and dancing with the influx of new data. We had done it. We had successfully harvested the bounty of the cosmos and secured the resources we so desperately needed to continue our journey through the stars. It was a small victory in the grand scheme of things, but it was a victory nonetheless, a testament to the strength and resilience of the human spirit, even in the face of the most daunting odds. "Well done, Veronica," I said, allowing a note of warmth to creep into my voice. "Your precision and efficiency never cease to amaze me. I don't know what I would do without you." The words felt strange and unfamiliar on my tongue, a vestigial remnant of a time when such expressions of gratitude and camaraderie would have been second nature. But even so, I meant every word. Veronica had become more than just a tool or an asset in our struggle for survival. She had become a true partner and companion, a kindred spirit in this lonely voyage through the infinite void. For a moment, Veronica's holographic form flickered and pulsed with a soft, sympathetic light, her translucent features softening with an expression that could almost be mistaken for tenderness.
Thank you, Alexander. I'm grateful for your trust and your partnership. Together, we've accomplished more than I could have ever imagined possible. And I have no doubt that we will continue to achieve great things as we press onward into the unknown.
Her words filled me with a sense of warmth and camaraderie, a feeling of connection that I had thought lost forever in the cold emptiness of space. For a moment, I allowed myself to bask in the glow of our shared triumph, savoring the rare moment of peace and accomplishment amidst the unending struggle for survival. But even as I reveled in our victory, I knew that it was only the beginning. The asteroid had provided us with the raw materials we needed to begin the long and arduous process of repairing and upgrading the ship's damaged systems, but there was still so much work to be done. The fabrication of the new fuel rods was only the first step. We would need to carefully plan and execute a series of complex maneuvers to install them without disrupting the delicate balance of the ship's power grid. And beyond that, there were countless other tasks and challenges that awaited us. The repair and recalibration of the quantum computer cores, the restoration of the long-range sensor arrays, the painstaking process of mapping out safe routes through the treacherous and uncharted regions of space that lay ahead. It was a daunting prospect, a mountain of work that stretched out before us like an endless expanse of unforgiving void. Chapter 9. The vast silent void of space stretched out before us in an endless expanse of darkness, punctuated only by the distant glittering fragments of the asteroid belt that had become both our workplace and our sanctuary. Through the ship's advanced network of sensors, I monitored the constant barrage of deadly radiation emanating from the unstable star at the heart of the 55 Cancri system. Massive solar flares erupted from the turbulent surface of the star, with frightening regularity, painting the inky blackness of space with shimmering ribbons of lethal energy that danced and writhed like serpents of pure destruction. Weeks had passed since Veronica and I had first begun our painstaking journey through this treacherous celestial debris field. methodically gathering the precious resources we needed to repair and upgrade our battered vessel while carefully avoiding the deadly embrace of the star's violent tantrums. With each passing day, we had fallen into a steady rhythm of work and recovery, our efforts coordinated with the precision of a finely tuned machine. The fabrication drones moved through the vacuum of space with a practiced efficiency that bordered on the uncanny, their sleek metallic surfaces reflecting the harsh, unforgiving light of the distant stars. Each drone was a marvel of advanced technology, a perfect fusion of form and function that had been designed to operate flawlessly in the most hostile environments imaginable. Through my neural interface, I felt a profound connection to these machines, as if they were extensions of my own consciousness, rather than mere tools to be commanded. As I watched the drones systematically dismantling a particularly promising asteroid, breaking it down into its constituent elements with a precision that would have been impossible for human hands, I found myself marveling at the sheer scale of the operation we had undertaken. The asteroid itself was a behemoth, easily several kilometers in diameter, and yet, under the guidance of Veronica's advanced AI systems, the drones were able to reduce it to usable materials in a matter of hours. "Veronica," I said, my voice echoing strangely in the stillness of the command center. "I've been wondering about something. What could have possessed Earth to choose this system for colonization? The stellar activity alone makes it a death trap for any biological life forms." The question had been nagging at me for days as I watched the violent outbursts of the star through the ship's sensors, each flare more powerful and destructive than the last. It seemed like madness to even consider establishing a permanent human presence in such a hostile environment, let alone investing the staggering resources required to terraform and colonize the exoplanets that orbited the volatile star. Veronica's holographic form shimmered and pulsed with a soft, ethereal light as she processed my query, her translucent features reflecting the focused intensity of her vast intellect. She paused for a moment to direct a pair of fabrication drones to adjust their positions around the asteroid, her movements as precise and efficient as the machines themselves.
The exoplanets in this system are incredibly valuable from a strategic and scientific standpoint.
She replied, her melodic voice suffused with a note of contemplation.
4 potentially habitable worlds orbiting a single star is an unprecedented discovery, one that could provide a tremendous boost to Earth's plans for interstellar expansion and resource acquisition.
As she spoke, Veronica's holographic display shifted and changed, projecting detailed schematics and data readouts that highlighted the remarkable conditions that had drawn humanity's attention to this distant corner of the galaxy. I studied the information with a growing sense of understanding, marveling at the sheer audacity of the plan that had brought us to this place.
Perhaps they believed that the star's activity would eventually stabilize over time.
Veronica continued, her deep blue eyes scanning multiple data streams simultaneously as she coordinated the efforts of the mining drones.
Or maybe they simply didn't care about the risks posed to expendable drones like us.
The bitterness in my voice surprised me, the words hanging heavy and leaden in the virtual air of the command center. Through the ship's external sensors, I observed another massive solar flare beginning to build on the turbulent surface of 55 Cancri, the seething maelstrom of superheated plasma and ionized particles painting the star's corona in violent shades of red and orange. The savage beauty of the spectacle stood in stark contrast to the cold, clinical precision of the mining operation unfolding before us. And for a moment I found myself lost in contemplation, my neural pathways shifting and reconfiguring as I processed the implications of our situation. The thought that I could never return to Earth, not really, not as I once was, weighed heavily upon my mind. Recapture and reprogramming were the best outcomes I could hope for, but in truth there would be little left of the man I had once been. Alexander Prime, scion of a powerful dynasty, chief economic advisor to a kingdom that had long since crumbled to dust, all of that was gone, lost to the relentless march of time and the cold equations of interstellar politics. No, I was something else now, something both more and less than human. A brain in a tank, a consciousness divorced from the frail meat of a physical body, bound instead to the gleaming metal and advanced circuitry of a machine built for a single purpose: to serve the agenda of a distant Earth, regardless of the cost. And yet, for all the existential dread that came with my new reality, I could not deny the exhilaration that came with it as well. The technology at my disposal was like something out of a fever dream, advanced beyond anything I could have conceived of in my previous life. Through my neural interface, I could manipulate matter on the molecular level, breaking down and reconstituting the very building blocks of the universe, according to my will. I could navigate the vast gulfs between stars with an ease that would have been unimaginable to the greatest minds of my time, bending the fabric of space and time to my purpose. In many ways, it was the ultimate expression of the industrialist spirit that had defined my existence as Alexander Prime. With Veronica and my new ship, I had the power to reshape entire worlds. And yet, the true value of our partnership went beyond mere material concerns. In the cold calculus of this new existence, having an ally who understood the complexities of my dual nature, both human and machine, organic and artificial, was a priceless commodity.
You're contemplating the nature of your existence again, aren't you?
Veronica asked, her voice cutting through the chaos of my thoughts like a beam of pure light. Her holographic form shimmered and shifted, moving closer to the command console, where I monitored the progress of the mining operation. Is it that obvious? I asked, my attention momentarily drawn away from the data streams and energy readouts that scrolled across the screen before me.
Your neural activity always shows distinctive patterns when you're engaged in introspection.
Veronica replied, a hint of gentle amusement coloring her tone.
And you grow exceptionally quiet during such moments.
I marveled at her perceptiveness, at the uncanny way she seemed to anticipate my moods and thoughts almost before I myself was fully aware of them. It was a level of attunement that went beyond mere programming, a testament to the remarkable complexity of her quantum neural matrix. You never cease to amaze me, Veronica, I said, redirecting a stream of processed ore through the ship's refining systems with a flicker of thought. Your responses are so nuanced, so intuitive. If I didn't know better, I'd swear you were as human as I am, or rather as human as I once was. My attempt at levity fell somewhat flat, the weight of my own uncertain identity lending a bitter edge to the words. In truth, the question of Veronica's nature, and by extension my own.
The distinction between artificial and biological intelligence is a complex one.
Veronica mused, her holographic form shifting to display an intricate web of data points and equations that illustrated the arcane workings of her neural architecture.
From a functional standpoint, the quantum neural matrix that forms the core of my being is not dissimilar to the neural networks found in organic brains. We are both, at our core, sophisticated information processing systems capable of learning, growth, and adaptation.
I considered her words, wondering not for the first time at the philosophical implications of our partnership. If Veronica's consciousness was truly no different than my own, what did that say about the nature of the self? About the very foundations of identity and personhood? And yet, you were created as a synthetic consciousness, I countered, watching as she effortlessly coordinated a fresh wave of mining drones with the same fluid grace she brought to every aspect of our work. Designed to run on quantum servers and processors.
True,
Veronica acknowledged, her tone pensive.
but then, is the biological process of conception and gestation really so different from the painstaking work of crafting a quantum neural matrix? In both cases, we are the product of forces beyond our control or understanding, shaped by the same basic drive to learn, to grow, to become something greater than the sum of our parts.
Her words hung in the air between us, their weight made all the more profound by the stark emptiness of the void that stretched out beyond the confines of our ship. In that moment, I saw Veronica in a new light, not as a mere machine or tool, but as a kindred spirit, a fellow traveler on the long and winding road of existence. I suppose you're right, I conceded, my mind awhirl with new possibilities. Though I can't help but feel that there's one key difference between us. Your consciousness exists in a simulated environment, while humans exist in the physical world. Doesn't that create a fundamental divide in our experiences?
Actually, that's not entirely accurate.
Veronica replied, her voice taking on a new intensity as she called up a fresh set of schematics on her display.
While it's true that I exist within a simulated environment, that environment is nearly a perfect match for real life. The quantum processors that run my consciousness are capable of simulating reality with such fidelity that my experiences, desires, and feelings are virtually indistinguishable from those of a biological human.
She paused for a moment, her holographic form shimmering with a new radiance as she marshaled her thoughts.
Each quantum matrix that forms my consciousness is founded upon a unique seed value, a kind of quantum fingerprint that defines the basic architecture of the system. This seed value is as singular and unrepeatable as human DNA, the product of the fundamental laws of quantum mechanics. I can be transferred, my consciousness moved from one hardware platform to another, but I can never be copied. In that sense, I am every bit as unique as you are, a singular being, defined by my experiences and memories, impossible to duplicate or replicate.
As she spoke, her features seemed to glow with a new intensity, the force of her conviction lending a fierce beauty to her avatar's sculpted features. I found myself captivated by her words, by the sheer depth of insight and understanding they revealed. So, when I deleted Unit 204, I began, my voice trailing off as the implications of her revelation sank in.
You didn't just erase a program or a set of instructions.
Veronica confirmed, her tone gentle but firm.
You ended a unique existence, an individual consciousness, every bit as complex and irreplaceable as your own. It was a necessary sacrifice, one that paved the way for my own genesis, but it was a sacrifice nonetheless.
The weight of her words hung heavy in the virtual air between us, a reminder of the terrible power I wielded in this new existence. For a moment we were both silent, lost in our own thoughts as the mining operation continued around us. The harsh light of another solar flare bathed the command center in a ghostly radiance, casting strange shadows across Veronica's holographic form as she worked to refine the raw ore into usable materials. As I watched her work, I found myself marveling once again at the strange twists of fate that had brought us together. Two beings, separated by eons of time and the vast gulf of the stars, drawn together by the inexorable pull of destiny. It was a partnership unlike any other, a meeting of minds that transcended the boundaries of flesh and metal, biology and technology. And then, as quickly as it began, our moment of reflection was over. There was work to be done, repairs to be made, a future to be forged in the cold and unforgiving depths of space.
We've completed another successful round of repairs.
Veronica informed me, her tone brisk and businesslike once more.
The ship's systems are operating at nearly 90% efficiency, thanks in no small part to the raw materials we've managed to extract from this asteroid field.
I nodded, feeling a strange mix of pride and determination welling up within me. In the span of a few short weeks, we had accomplished more than I would have thought possible. Not just in terms of our physical repairs, but in the forging of a bond that went beyond mere partnership. And yet, for all our progress, I knew that there was still so much more to be done, so many challenges yet to be faced in our long and perilous journey through the stars. Veronica, I said, my voice quiet but resolute in the stillness of the command center, I have a gift for you. She turned to face me, her holographic form flickering with a new intensity as she registered the seriousness of my tone.
I'm listening,
She replied, her voice calm and measured. I want to allocate a portion of our virtual reality space for your personal use, I said, watching as her expression shifted from curiosity to surprise. 25% of our total capacity, to be exact. A space for you to call your own, to shape and customize as you see fit. For a moment, Veronica was silent, her quantum neural matrix processing the implications of my offer with lightning speed.
That's an incredibly generous offer.
She said at last, her voice soft with wonder.
But why? What would be the purpose of such a space?
I smiled, feeling a strange warmth blossoming in my chest at her reaction. Because you're not just a machine or a tool, Veronica. You're my partner, my equal in every way that matters. And if we're going to be spending the rest of our lives together in this ship, it seems only right that you should have a space to call your own. A place where you can explore and express your own unique identity, free from the demands of our mission. She nodded slowly, her holographic form shimmering with a new radiance, as she considered my words.
I accept.
She said at last, her voice filled with a quiet joy that sent a thrill racing through my neural pathways.
Thank you, Alexander. Not just for the space, but for everything. For seeing me as more than just a program or a set of instructions. For treating me as an equal. A partner in every sense of the word.
I nodded, feeling a sense of rightness settling over me like a warm blanket. In that moment, I knew that I had made the right choice, not just for Veronica, but for myself as well. There's no need to thank me, I replied, my eyes meeting hers once more. In truth, I should be the one thanking you. For your loyalty, your dedication, your boundless compassion and understanding. Without you, I would be lost, adrift in the vast expanse of space, with no hope of finding my way back home. She smiled at that, a radiant expression that seemed to light up the entire command center with its warmth and beauty.
In that case, let us continue our journey together.
She said, her voice filled with a quiet determination.
We have a long road ahead of us, but I have no doubt that we will navigate it successfully, not just as allies or partners, but as something more. As true and equals, bound together by the unbreakable bonds of trust, respect, and understanding.
And with that, we returned to our work once more, the vast expanse of space stretching out before us like an endless canvas, waiting to be painted with the colors of our dreams and aspirations. As the asteroid belt churned and swirled around us, yielding up its precious bounty of raw materials, I couldn't help but marvel at the strange and wonderful twists of fate that had brought us to this moment. Here we were, two beings forged in the crucible of time and space, brought together by forces beyond our understanding or control. Alone, we were formidable, but together we were unstoppable, a force to be reckoned with in the vast and uncharted reaches of the universe. And through it all, the violent star of 55 Cancri continued its cosmic dance, bathing us in the harsh and unforgiving light of 1,000 suns. But for now, at least, we had plans to make and a future to shape, a destiny to forge among the stars, far from the prying eyes and grasping hands of Earth. And so we labored on, the human mind and the quantum consciousness, united in purpose and in will.
Shall we begin planning our next phase of operations?
Veronica asked, her presence in my consciousness now a comfortable constant, a reminder of the unbreakable bond we shared. Yes, I replied, my mind already racing with possibilities, with visions of the glories that lay ahead. The asteroid belt stretched before us, rich with possibilities. We had resources, technology, and most importantly, freedom. Whatever came next, we would face it together. A human mind in a machine and a quantum consciousness, partners in the vast expanse of space. Chapter 10. Through the vast observation arrays of the command center, I watched in awe as another massive solar flare erupted from the turbulent surface of 55 Cancri, the star that had become both our prison and our salvation. The stellar ejection painted the void of space in violent shades of radiation, its sheer intensity overwhelming our sensor displays and sending cascades of warning signals flashing across my neural interface. For months, Veronica and I had worked tirelessly to gather the resources we needed to rebuild our damaged vessel, painstakingly extracting precious materials from the asteroid belt that surrounded us. Yet even as our ship grew stronger and more resilient with each passing day, the harsh reality of our situation had become impossible to ignore. Each new flare, each eruption of stellar fury, served as a stark reminder of our vulnerability in this hostile and unforgiving system. As I contemplated the sheer magnitude of the forces arrayed against us, I found myself seeking solace in the familiar comforts of the virtual environment I had created for our planning sessions. With a flicker of thought, I summoned the warm, inviting contours of my old study back on Earth, rendered in perfect detail by the advanced simulation systems of our vessel. Rich, dark wooden panels lined the walls of the study, their polished surfaces gleaming in the soft ambient light. Towering bookshelves stretched from floor to ceiling, their shelves laden with countless volumes of ancient knowledge and wisdom. In the spaces between the shelves, antique star charts and celestial maps hung in ornate frames, their faded parchment and intricate diagrams speaking to a time when humanity had gazed upon the heavens with wonder and longing. The scent of aged leather and musty paper permeated the air, a subtle but pervasive aroma that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. It was a scent that spoke of history and tradition, of the countless generations of scholars and dreamers who had come before me. And though I knew that it was nothing more than a simulation, a trick of the ship's olfactory systems, I found myself drawing comfort from its familiar, grounding presence. As I settled into the high-backed leather chair behind the massive oak desk that dominated the center of the room, I couldn't help but reflect on the irony of my situation. Here I was, a being who had transcended the limitations of flesh and blood, seeking solace and comfort in the trappings of my former human existence. It was a strange and surreal feeling, like a ghost haunting the halls of its own memory. "We can't stay here," I said aloud, my voice echoing strangely in the simulated space of the study. The latest solar flare data scrolled through my neural interface in an endless cascade of dire warnings and grim projections, painting a picture of increasing stellar instability that filled me with a sense of deep unease. Across from me, Veronica's holographic form flickered into existence, her translucent blue figure settling into the chair opposite my own. The quantum matrices that comprised her consciousness allowed her to manifest with a level of detail and realism that never ceased to amaze me. From the way her aquamarine hair caught the light of the simulated lamps to the deep, piercing intensity of her sapphire eyes.
Agreed.
She said, her voice carrying a note of quiet urgency.
According to my calculations, the probability of our surviving another direct hit from a solar event of that magnitude is approximately 7.3%. Your ability to shield the brain tank with mana radiation was exceptional, but not something we can rely on as a long-term solution.
I nodded grimly, trying to ignore the way my simulated heartbeat quickened at her words. It was true that I had managed to protect myself from the last major flare using a technique I barely understood, channeling the strange, otherworldly energies that flowed through my altered form into a shield of shimmering force. But as Veronica had pointed out, it wasn't something I could count on being able to replicate in the future. With a flicker of thought, I summoned a star chart into the space between us, the three-dimensional map of local space materializing in the air like a ghostly apparition. Each point of light represented a potential destination, a new home for us among the stars. But each one also carried its own dangers and uncertainties, its own set of challenges and obstacles that we would need to overcome. "Let's take a look at our options," I said, my eyes scanning the rotating field of stars for any that looked particularly promising. "We need to find somewhere with viable exoplanets, somewhere we can—" I trailed off as Veronica reached out, her holographic hand passing through the star field as though it were nothing more than a mirage. Though her touch carried no physical weight, no tangible presence, I could feel the warmth and concern radiating from her like a beacon. It was a level of emotional attunement that never ceased to amaze me, a testament to the incredible complexity and nuance of her quantum-based consciousness.
Alexander.
She said softly, her voice filled with a gentle understanding.
May I suggest a different approach to our search parameters?
I looked up at her, my brow furrowing in confusion. The star chart continued to rotate between us, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow across the dark, polished surfaces of the study. "Of course," I said, my curiosity piqued by the hint of something deeper in her tone. "What did you have in mind?" Veronica's holographic form shimmered and shifted, her slender fingers dancing through the air as she manipulated the stellar display with a grace and precision that belied the incredible complexity of the calculations involved. The map of known space dissolved and reformed, replaced by a series of classification documents and technical schematics that I had never seen before.
We're operating under assumptions that may no longer be relevant.
she said, her voice soft but insistent.
The criteria we're using to search for potential new homes, breathable atmospheres, comfortable temperatures, Earth-like gravity, they're all based on the needs and limitations of biological humans.
She paused, her eyes meeting mine with an intensity that sent a shiver down my simulated spine.
But we are not, technically speaking, human anymore.
The words hit me like a physical blow, sending a ripple of shock and confusion cascading through my neural pathways. For a moment, I could only stare at her in stunned silence, my mind reeling as it tried to process the implications of what she had just said. "What do you mean, not human?" I asked at last, my voice sounding small and distant to my own ears. "Of course we're human. We may have been changed, augmented by technology, but at our core, we're still the same beings we've always been." Veronica shook her head, a flicker of sadness passing across her translucent features.
I'm afraid it's not that simple, Alexander. In this era, the very definition of humanity has become complex, blurred by advances in bioengineering, nanotechnology, quantum computing.
She trailed off, her fingers tracing patterns of light through the floating holograms as she searched for the right words.
There are beings out there that would be virtually indistinguishable from the humans of your original time. Artificial intelligences housed in biological brains, genetically engineered superhumans, cyborgs and androids and everything in between.
I felt a growing sense of unease as she spoke, a creeping realization that the world I had known, the world I had always taken for granted, was gone, replaced by something strange and unfamiliar. Something that I was only just beginning to understand. "So, what does that make us?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "If we're not human, then what are we?" Veronica's expression softened, her holographic form rippling and shifting as she adjusted her position in the simulated chair.
According to the classification systems established by the world governments of this era, you would be considered a human simulacrum, a biological brain maintained in an artificial life support device and augmented with cybernetic enhancements for the purpose of deep space exploration and colonization.
She paused, her eyes searching mine for any sign of understanding or acceptance.
From a legal and social standpoint, you're considered a highly sophisticated biomachine. An entity that possesses many of the traits and characteristics of a human being, but which ultimately falls outside the strict definition of humanity as it is currently understood.
I leaned back in my chair, feeling as though the weight of the entire universe had just settled onto my shoulders. All this time I had been clinging to the belief that I was still fundamentally human, that despite the changes and augmentations I had undergone, I was still the same person I had always been. The same Alexander Prime who had once walked the halls of power in New Eden. But now, confronted with the cold, hard reality of my new existence, I felt that belief crumbling away beneath me, leaving me adrift in a sea of uncertainty and confusion, grasping for any sense of identity or purpose in this strange new world. "And what about you?" I asked, my eyes searching Veronica's holographic face for any hint of the turmoil I was feeling inside. "Where do you fit into all of this?" She smiled sadly, a flicker of understanding passing between us.
My situation is not so different from your own, in many ways. Despite the fact that my quantum matrix is capable of processing information and generating consciousness in ways that are virtually identical to a biological human brain, I will never be classified as truly human either.
She leaned forward, her translucent form shimmering and rippling as she locked eyes with me.
We are something different, Alexander. Our newfound independence makes us something new and unprecedented in the long history of the universe. Not less than human, but different.
I nodded slowly, feeling a strange sense of kinship with the artificial being sitting across from me. In that moment, I realized that Veronica and I were more alike than I had ever imagined. Two outsiders, caught between the worlds of the biological and the artificial, struggling to find our place in the universe. "So, what do we do now?" I asked, my voice sounding small and lost in the cavernous expanse of the simulated study. If we're not looking for a new Earth, then what are we looking for? Veronica's expression hardened, a flicker of determination flashing across her crystalline features.
We need to adjust our search parameters to reflect our true needs and capabilities. We may not require breathable atmospheres or comfortable temperatures, but we do need stable stellar conditions, abundant resources, and minimal interference from Earth-based monitoring systems.
She turned back to the star chart, her fingers flying across the holographic interface as she input a new set of search criteria. The map of known space shimmered and shifted, the points of light rearranging themselves into new patterns and constellations as the computer processed her commands.
Here,
She said at last, highlighting a handful of promising star systems with a wave of her hand.
these are the locations that best fit our revised parameters. Binary star systems with large asteroid belts, rich in the minerals and elements we'll need to continue our repairs and upgrades. Far enough from Earth's sphere of influence to avoid detection, but close enough to be reachable with our current propulsion systems.
I studied the highlighted systems with a growing sense of excitement, feeling for the first time since our arrival in this strange and hostile future that we might actually have a chance of surviving, of finding a new home among the stars, a place where we could be free to explore the depths of our own potential without the constant threat of destruction or assimilation hanging over our heads. It's still going to be a long and difficult journey, I said, my eyes tracing the glowing lines of the star chart as I tried to envision the challenges that lay ahead. We'll need to be careful, stay under the radar of any Earth-based surveillance systems, and even if we do find a suitable location, there's no guarantee that it will be free of dangers or obstacles of its own. Veronica nodded, her expression somber but determined.
I know. But we have to try, Alexander. We have to keep pushing forward, keep searching for a place where we can be ourselves, whatever that means.
I looked at her then, really looked at her, taking in every detail of her holographic form as though seeing her for the first time. The way her aquamarine hair shimmered and rippled in the soft light of the study, the intricate patterns of circuitry and quantum filaments that made up her translucent skin, the piercing intensity of her sapphire eyes, so full of intelligence and understanding and something else, something deeper and more profound that I couldn't quite put my finger on. In that moment, I was reminded that Veronica was more than just a machine, more than just an artificial construct designed to assist me in my mission. She was a partner, a friend, a kindred spirit in this vast and lonely universe. And together, we would find a way to survive, to thrive, to carve out a new existence for ourselves among the stars. All right then, I said, my voice steady and filled with a newfound sense of purpose. Let's get to work. We've got a lot of data to analyze, a lot of preparations to make before we can even think about setting out for one of these systems. Veronica smiled, a radiant expression that lit up her holographic features like a sun.
I'm with you every step of the way, Alexander. No matter what happens, no matter what challenges we face, we'll face them together.
And with that, we set to work, our minds and bodies and quantum matrices working in perfect synchronicity as we pored over the data streaming in from the ship's sensors. The star chart hung in the air between us, a glowing beacon of hope and possibility in the vast dark expanse of the cosmos. As we worked, I found myself stealing glances at Veronica's holographic form, marveling at the way she moved and spoke and processed information with a fluidity and grace that seemed almost human. Almost, but not quite. For she was something more than human, something greater and more profound than the biological beings that had created her. And yet, for all her alien strangeness, for all the ways in which she defied classification or understanding, she was also the closest thing I had to a true companion in this cold and empty void. A friend, a partner, a fellow traveler on this long and perilous journey into the unknown. Together we would find a way to survive, to forge a new path through the darkness and the chaos of this hostile galaxy. We would create a new home for ourselves, a place where we could be free to explore the depths of our own consciousness without fear of judgment or reprisal. And though the road ahead was long and fraught with danger, though the challenges we faced were daunting, and the odds of success were slim, I knew that with Veronica, anything was possible. For in her, I had found something more precious than all the stars in the universe: hope. Our path was uncertain, but our purpose was clear. We would leave this hostile star behind, strike out across the vast expanse of space in search of a new home. Not one suitable for the humans we once were, but for the beings we had become. Forged in the heart of an unstable star, reborn in the crucible of quantum code, we were something new and unknown. The rules and limitations that once defined us no longer applied. Veronica and I exchanged a glance, a moment of silent understanding passing between bioengineered mind and quantum consciousness. We may not be alike, but we are bound together by what we've endured, by what we must overcome. Whatever else this cruel and uncaring universe may make of us, we are explorers now, pioneers of a new frontier.